Let's duet. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Monday, February 3rd. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We are brought to you by multiple promo codes that we will touch on throughout this show. Currently, you can see one of them on the top of the screen. We'll get to that in a bit if you're a PGA DFS person. And if you're a sports betting person, we got one of those for you too. 8 games on DraftKings, 10 games on FanDuel, and the namesake of Chris's baby is no longer on the Dallas Mavericks. Spags, how's it going?
That's obviously a chaotic NBA weekend. I enjoyed your takes on the strategy show as you tried to one by one put everybody down in chat for being wrong about Luka Doncic and the trade and how stupid they were for not grasping was the most illogical trade in the entire NBA probably and how it was handled from the ground up. But yeah, it feels like I mentioned it to my wife over the weekend. I was like, can we move back to LA? Because Luka is on LA now. It makes sense. Still can't afford a house there, unfortunately. But no. Crazy trade. The other trade too, so much less crazy, but still one that matters for this slate too. And then so many Q tags today. It's like an absolute crush, a perfect storm of all the things that make NBA hectic and chaotic kind of rolled up into one. And the Luka trade, I've been reading about it all weekend. It's one of the more fascinating things I think to ever happen just because of how it goes against everything we know of how to run a basketball team, which we know so much, obviously, as people on the internet.
I still can't believe that it happened. Let's get your very quick thoughts on the two deals. I assume you are very much team the Lakers won that deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mavs will be competitive. I've been surprised how competitive they've been without Luka at all, with just Gafford at center. So it's going to get better. I think it's weird the way they're going to approach it because AD doesn't want to play center, so they're going to have him at the 4. I assume with Lively and Gafford playing 5, and then you have PJ Washington at the 3, which he can defend, but it's not a natural fit. But it's an interesting team. It's a team that I think they've bullied OKC a little bit at times this year. Maybe they could do that again with it. So I get the logic for Dallas being competitive this year. The Lakers, though, it's a generational talent you're getting. And now you add him to a city that's already got Ohtani and you have that's had Mike Trout for years. And it's this is one of those guys. Trade, if you can make it, you do it every single time. Anytime a guy can get you 60% of your team's possessions, they're going to be efficient and they're going to be high quality ones. If it's not him getting the shot, it's him setting up assists. That's a game changer. And I'm with you. The Lakers, I think, championship potential contender team this year. They have a lot of things that fit, and it's much easier to find a 5 to defend the rim than it is to find a generational scorer who can do everything. It's still only 25, and he's done this while he's fat and drinking beers. God forbid he ever gets serious about things. So it's a crazy trade in every aspect, but I think the Lakers won it handily.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. There's one thing that I don't think that I said enough that I think people are probably confused on. Yeah, Dallas is still really good. It's not like getting AD makes the team bad. They're just not as good as they were before and didn't get enough back for Luka Doncic. They don't take a step, it's not a crazy step back. It'll be largely imperceptible for most of the regular season. And as you get to the playoffs, their ceiling isn't as high as it used to be. And I don't know why you would want to do that. What do you think about the De'Aaron Fox trade?
That one I think makes sense. It seems like Fox, kind of politicked his way. I think Simmons might have made this analogy. Bill Simmons did, but it did stick with me. Politicking to get on a hot new TV show is kind of the vibe where it's Wemby's going to be a key player for years. There might be a better point guard that comes along and be a better fit, whether it be the draft, free agency, or whatever. But Fox now has that job and he's locked into it. So in terms of the Triple H political machinations of things, he got himself one of the better situations in the NBA. So more power to him. I think he's been great this year. He's been one of my favorite Kings to play. One of the only ones I played on a lot of slates. So him being on the Spurs, sucks he displaces Chris Paul, I would guess, because Chris Paul now, what does he do? Feels like he maybe should be bought out. But I think it's a great trade for them. Kings too, I think a little bit of a downgrade going to Levine, but still one where with what they're trying to do, which is just acquire mediocre wings and let them, or ball handlers, let them do whatever. Malik Monk, same thing. DeRozan, same thing. I don't know that getting last year's Bulls team on your team is a solution, but they'll be the same team they were, basically just fighting to be around 500, maybe make the play in, maybe make a run. They're not good though.
Yeah, I think the Kings did well to, take a quarter step back from Fox to Levine, but acquire a couple picks and a bunch of seconds and stuff. I thought that was a pretty good, piece of business to get something done. I like it for the Spurs, and then the Bulls continue to just fail at trading people away and getting no assets in return. But we have a lot of games to talk about now. I wanted to get into that at least a little bit. It's too big of news in the NBA right now to try to avoid it. So it had to be talked about a little bit. Now we get in to the goods. Let's talk about today's slate. Washington Wizards, 5-point underdogs in Charlotte, 215 total. We do have a little bit of injury news that we're waiting on here. Jordan Poole is questionable with a non-COVID illness. If we're a COVID illness, we could really dig into this. But for right now, it is just a non-COVID illness. We are getting 20% ownership coming into Jonas Valanciunas because Jonas Valanciunas is the starting center because Alex Sarr is out for this one. Single-digit ownership everywhere else. What are you doing with Joe Val? And then what do you think we do with Washington if Poole is in or if Poole is out?
So Joe Val right now, I'm above the field on him. Got him at about 29% compared to the field's 25 and change. I feel good about that number. Joe Val finally played 30 minutes. Unfortunately, it was on a weekend slate where I don't usually play NBA DFS on the weekend. That's my time to recalibrate and spend time with family and whatever. So I missed out on Joe Val actually playing 4 quarters of run for once, but he's been good whenever he's done it. He's averaged 1.3 fantasy points per minute. Now you have a spot versus Charlotte where he should be close to the rim. You're competing with Mark Williams. I think he looks pretty good. There's some markets out there that look pretty good that Jordan's showing you on screen as well, but I would say for me, J Val's really the one wizard I feel confident about for DFS. For Poole, if Poole's out, I guess you get more Malcolm Brogdon, but I don't know how much that matters. Kuzma looks a little bit better. Koulibaly looks a little bit better. They still have enough guys in rotation if Brogdon is going to be back in that I don't know you gain a whole lot. Poole, I think if he's in, looks like an okay play, and if he's out, he theoretically opens up more than he does practically because the total's just not that high. And versus Charlotte, it is a down pace spot for Washington technically.
I'm a little over the field on Joe Val as well. I got about 26%, so nothing too crazy. He's just such a good per minute guy. If it breaks correctly, he could play like 29 or 30 minutes. Sometimes you get the 3-quarter game for Joe Val, but he could still get to 38 fantasy points in 3 quarters. It's just going to take a hell of a run out. If Poole ends up out, I think we're probably looking a little closer at Kyle Kuzma. I'm guessing Bob Carrington becomes a bit of a thing if we get Poole out. He's only 3,300 right now. You're probably giving Bub Carrington 28 minutes if you end up without Poole. Now, he's not a good per minute guy by any means. He's like a 0.7 guy at best. But if Poole ends up out, Carrington's going to get enough minutes to matter. The reason that I'm confident in that is because Jared Butler is with the G League team today. So there's not even really going to be any competition there. So I think that Bub Carrington would be the guy that jumps off the page the most if Poole ends up out. We are not short on guard value at this point, however, with no Damian Lillard and no Giannis in this one today.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Rollins to me, I think will look better than whatever you would get with Poole being out. I love Ryan Rollins, but that's when I'll spoiler alert right now. I think the field will agree with me as well.
Yeah, and taking a look at Odd Shopper in the portfolio EV tool, we don't have a ton of value right now. We have one play out there that has some positive EV, and it's basically rounding up from 0.0. It's a little bit of Bilal Koulibaly, but we just don't have much in the portfolio EV side for the Wizards. So I also don't think we're going to have much on the DFS side other than Joe Val, but we're going to have something on Charlotte. It kind of just depends on how this news breaks. Vasily Micic is questionable. No LaMelo, no Cody Martin, no Brandon Miller, no Josh Okogie, so they're missing a bunch. 10% ownership to Mark Williams. 5% to Miles Bridges, nothing to the rest of this team. Let's start with your boy, Mark Williams here at 8,400. This is another guy that I have about 25% of, so I'm getting a stand on Mark Williams. He's got a pretty decent matchup against Joe Val because while Joe Val might have a good day, you tend to see these situations where Joe Val suddenly has 8 points and 7 rebounds, but they're also getting outscored by 10 points, and I think that could be a pretty good sign for Mark Williams. What do you want to do with him?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think in terms of the basketball here, this should be a really good match for Mark Williams, who can pick up a lot of blocks, can pick up a lot of rebounds, can pick up a lot of shots at the rim, and Joe Val's going to keep him where he needs to be. So for both guys, I think it kind of benefits well. You do sometimes see that center push-pull a little bit where they're competing for the same rebounds, the same shots at the rim, and that could maybe hurt the other side a little bit here. But I think with 2 bad teams, there should be a lot of rebounds to go around, not a high total game. I think they both can hit. So not a crazy big stand for me for Mark Williams, who I do normally love, as Josh pointed out. I'm only getting him at 17% compared to the field's 11. I think it's because I have Bridges projected really highly, have him just over 50 fantasy points today. He's been a beast overall without LaMelo, without Brandon Miller. So I think these guys both look great. Competitive spot versus Washington. The total's not too big of a stand favoring Charlotte here. You expect them to blow it out, and big pace up as well. So Williams and Bridges to me are both really strong plays for the Hornets, and definitely tournament ownership with Williams at 11% and Bridges at 5.
If Micic ends up out, do you think you're getting to KJ Simpson or Isaiah Wong or some of this other Charlotte trash?
I like KJ Simpson probably more than most people do. I think he does a good job kind of producing in every category. Whenever he's filled in for Micic too, like whenever Micic is chalk, KJ Simpson has been available and then usually takes minutes away because he's playing pretty well. He'll play spry defense. He'll set up some plays well, create shots. I like Simpson at 4,400. I think a little bit of the upside's priced out there. And also, like, you have better value. Like Ryan Rollins is, I think, a smash play with how he's played over the course of a year without Lillard. So a little bit tough to get there, but I think on other slates, I think it'd be a little more valid. And if he were a little bit cheaper, he'd be more valid. But as it is right now, I'm not sold on him.
Yeah, I'll be at least a little intrigued in Wong if Micic ends up out, just because Wong's still only 3,200, and if he can get up to that like 20-minute range, I think we could feel a little bit better about it. But I really don't think Micic being out is going to create overwhelming value. Simpson will look a little bit better. Seth Curry will look a little bit better. I don't think we're just going to get like a sort of smash play from the Charlotte Hornets right now. So it looks like I'm taking a bit of a contrarian stand, getting 2x the field on Mark Williams, but I don't really have anything else here for these Hornets.
Yeah, I mean, I would defend Bridges. He's an awful human being, but like, I think that based on what we know of his legal issues and whatever, maybe he's a great guy besides that. But like, he really does fill it up like a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy without LaMelo and Miller out there. And versus Washington, it's like, what's stopping him really?
And Miles Bridges right now does have a 1.4% EV play in the portfolio EV tool. That is his under 4.5 assists. And so far on this season, the historical ROI of plays that we've recommended as assist options, 3.1% ROI. It's not bad. That's not bad for just getting anything you can. Not a crazy value, but at least a little something we can grab. Might have something different here. Atlanta and Detroit. Hawks are 4-point dogs in Detroit, 237 total. This is one of the higher totals on today's slate. One of the highest paces as well. I have this as the second fastest game. Atlanta, shorthanded right now. We're missing some dudes. Bogdanovich now with the team. Clint Capella out for this one. Trae Young, though, is probable, and clearly Jalen Johnson out for the rest of the year. 5% ownership to DeAndre Hunter is the most coming in for Atlanta on DraftKings. Right now, they are the second lowest owned team on DK. I essentially don't have anything here. 2 shares of DeAndre Hunter is the max of what I have for the Hawks. Do you like anything here?
No, I got nothing above 7%. DeAndre Hunter, I have 7. That's my biggest stand here. So a little bit above the field on him, but certainly not a stand. Trae Young just doesn't gain a whole lot from Jalen Johnson being out. And I even ran it for Bogdan and Jalen Johnson being out. He was like about 1.12 fantasy points per minute. And granted, he shot pretty poorly, under 50% true shooting. So if he does shoot a little bit better, that would uptick a little bit. But he's averaging 1.2 fantasy points per minute on the year anyways. So like, it's one of the things that stood out for me throughout the year, where like when Jalen Johnson's out, he just doesn't gain a lot. Bogdan being out doesn't matter for him. Like guys like Dyson Daniels gain more, Hunter gains more in usage. So I don't love those guys as plays either, but I don't think that Trae is one of the pay up options I want to go to. And maybe he goes off again, like the All-Star snub day he had the other day where he talked about it and kind of filled it up old school, and maybe Cade brings it out of him. But like based on a median projection set, I just don't know why he'd get to Trae here in the spot. And Dyson Daniels a little bit too expensive too. I think Hunter fits well at small forward, power forward in his price tag, but really nothing on the Hawks looks that good. And I think you can make the case maybe tournament options here if you want to take your shot. I just don't see it for myself.
Yeah, I like Trae in terms of him being a contrarian tournament option at 1% owned. Like you got 15% ownership coming into Cade on the opposite side. I don't think Cade and Trae are just like polar opposites today. Yes, Cade's a better option, but at no ownership for Trae, I think it's at least reasonable to want to take some flyers. And we got the $5 100K to first on DraftKings today. That's like a 70,000 entry contest. Trae Young makes some sense to me there, but I don't see anybody from Atlanta that you're building your lineup around. That they don't have that today.
Yeah, same pitch.
For Detroit, we've got 15% ownership coming into Cade, as I just mentioned, 10,300 point guard only on the DK side, point guard only on the FanDuel side, where he's 20% owned. And then we're getting 10% ownership to Jalen Duren, who has been falling into a bunch of extra minutes when he's not in foul trouble, and sometimes when Isaiah Stewart is not allowed to play in those basketball games. Speaking of 10% owned centers that I have 25% of, add Jalen Duren to the list like Mark Williams, basically up to the exact same amount. I have Duren and very little else. A little bit of Cade, nothing crazy.
I'm getting Cade 2x to field here. I certainly
Okay.
prefer Jokic and SGA, but Cade, the rates for him without Jaden Ivey have always been a thing that I've been playing a little bit more of. And frankly, he hasn't disappointed me too much with the salary coming up. Like he's always around that 50-point range. I'd say I'd have him projected for a little bit over 55.5. So I think for me, that looks pretty good compared to Stokastic's 53 fantasy point projection. And obviously the matchup with Atlanta, nothing to worry about there in terms of, it being a pace up spot, not a great defense, and also a pretty good team total for Detroit with a 120.8 implied points. So I like Cade a good amount here. Duran, I'm under the field on. I think there are other center options I prefer, but I have no issue with the 14% ownership. I got him at 11 and change. I just don't think I want to go over on him. And Malik Beasley, I know you talked about on the strategy show. Things have obviously moved around a lot since then. He's another guy I get a lot of because he does gain the most, I think, in Jaden Ivey not being on the court. At 5,100, he works well, but there's now better values on the slate. But I would highlight him because sometimes these guys like that kind of get forgotten, pass over for better values, and have a tangible upside like Beasley does, this 3-point shooting. I think he's worth kind of considering more than the field's 4% ownership, but I'm getting him just flat with the field as it is.
Okay. I'm surprised I'm getting him because I don't normally get a lot of Duran in these scenarios, but I don't know. The minutes have been creeping up ever so slightly. I've got him in for 29 today, and he seems to be popping at least a little bit for me. The pace up nature of this matchup seems to be helping. I think the total's carrying a lot of weight here, but I assume if I'm 2xing him, he's going to get in foul trouble, and it's probably a beef stew day. Beef stew, by the way, flat min salary, 3K. It's wild for somebody that is the regular backup. Like Larry Nance is 4,200. How is that
Yeah,
possible?
he missed the one game, so the algorithm got confused, and now they think
It
Paul
did.
Reed is like competing for minutes or something.
Josh Chapman hit us with a super chat. He said Hunter getting traded for Randall. I would be surprised about that.
I mean, Atlanta should be going. Yeah, I guess they're not tanking, right? Because they don't have their pick, right?
They have no need to tank. I think if Atlanta's going to trade DeAndre Hunter, they could probably do a little bit better than bringing Randall back. Not that I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of Randall, but man, these next couple days are going to be fun. Excited for the deadline. Uh, Odd Shopper does have a 5 Odd Shopper rating play on Cade Cunningham right now, under 2.5 threes made. It's minus 158 at FanDuel. Now, I will say, historical ROI on the 3-point props has been negative. So your mileage may vary on that one. But if you're not much of a Cade Cunningham fan, under 2.5 threes is getting recommended with 3% EV. We also have an under recommendation on Malik Beasley's threes. So the betting markets are not a big believer in threes getting made by the Pistons at this moment. Use that information however you choose. And hit that like button. There's 1,200 of you in here, 115 likes. Seems like we can get that number up over 200 right now. That takes 85 of you hitting that thumbs up. So if you can do that, do it now. Live before lock coming up next. They'll go from 6 until 7. You'll get Greg and Eric. Then you'll get myself and Greg Ehrenberg from 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock on playback, live after lock. We're watching games. We're talking late swaps. We're talking ownership. We're talking bets, whatever we can find. Because we're going to be able to do some swaps before Houston and New York. And then we have 3 games locking at 8 and more news coming in at 9 o'clock for those final 2 games. It's a great slate for late swaps. You don't want to miss it on playback. And we're watching games. If you have League Pass, you could watch along with us. If you don't, maybe you'll get a VIP pass. You could watch it along for the night, or you just see myself and Greg, just like this show is. Houston Rockets, 6.5-point dogs in New York, 223 total. Rockets are kind of confusing today because Jock Landale is doubtful. No one cares. Alperen Şengün is questionable. Everyone cares. Fred VanVleet already out. Jabari Smith still out. Now there's no ownership coming into Houston. Do you like anything for Houston if Şengün is in?
No, we got a lot of games left, so I'll spare the time here. If Şengün's in, I think they're all not appropriately priced. Even with VanVleet out, you should have enough guys taking up minutes who have similar opportunities or are priced kind of appropriately. So nobody above 3% for me, and the field seems like nobody above 5%. So yeah, Houston, if Şengün's in, it just doesn't feel like they have any plays that matter.
Yeah, I don't see much here. I did get 14% of Jalen Green. I think that's just largely randomness for how my lineups are getting built. If Şengün is out, we have Steven Adams sitting at 4,300, who's been picking up some extra minutes lately with Şengün out. Jeff Green is here at the flat 3K, power forward center. What do you think we're going to be getting to for Houston if we don't have Şengün?
I don't know that people will be getting to Steven Adams, but I think they should in this matchup versus Towns, where you kind of need some size, and Adams' ruggedness against Towns is certainly one way to try to keep him, from doing the worst damage that he can do. Steven Adams has averaged 1.03 fantasy points per minute. He's been not found a youth level, but like he's been good. So I
Yeah.
think if he gets the starting minutes with Şengün out, I would take that shot. Amin Thompson would feel a little bit underowned, I think, at 1% if Şengün were out, just offering up a little more in terms of the rebounding upside, the peripheral upside as well. But I still don't think he would project that well. I think Adams would probably be the only one that opens up, and maybe Tari Eason getting a few more minutes would make him closer to playable. But still, I think Adams would be close to, again, not a smash play at his price tag, but close to a core play, if not actually a core play.
If Jeff Green starts, do you think you'll be getting to Jeff Green today?
Why would Jeff Green start though? Like, I mean, against Towns, like they had Adams just start last time out, right? Like, why would?
Yeah, they
Why would
did.
he?
I don't know. You never know with these guys. Just putting it out there. He's the flat 3K. That's why I'm asking.
He's been awful this year, even by
Yeah.
Jeff Green veteran standards, like 0.65 fantasy points per minute. I wouldn't get starting him versus Towns because I think you're just opening up then Towns crushing you. Whereas Adams, at least you drive some elbows into the spine. You do kind of those 80s, 90s basketball things to Towns. Like that's what Adams can do. I think he would pick up the start, but I get what you're saying about Green. He'd be cheap enough. You could take the flyer if he were starting. I just find it low probability that he would start.
I agree. So then the question becomes, over these past two games, 27 minutes to Tari Eason in their most recent game, 30 to Tari Eason in the first game that Alperen Şengün missed. If we're giving 28 minutes to Tari Eason, who's a fantasy point per minute guy, 5,400, is he the guy? Is he the priority for Houston if Şengün is out?
I don't think he still would be, because I don't think the
Okay.
fantasy points would get high enough there. Because like he's priced, close enough to 6K. Right now I have him at 27 fantasy points, 26.7. So like
Okay.
he would need to get up to like about 30-ish. It's possible. I just don't think he would look as good of a value as some other guys. Like I really like one guy from Milwaukee in case, and the shot that Lopez ends up out, even if he doesn't, Tyler Smith at 3K. Like I think that guy would be a value I want to take shots on a little bit. And not to say that he's like a guaranteed locked in minutes player, because like Josh pointed out, for Tari Eason will play minutes, but like I think it'd be hard to get to like a 6K okay looking guy compared to like a 3K guy who I think can produce at one fantasy point per minute today. So I don't know that Eason would ever come up meaningfully to me, but I get what you're saying, and I could see the logic in him at least being a tournament option if he doesn't end up 10% or more owned.
Okay. Nothing really going on the Houston side. We have one recommended play on Portfolio EV. It's a one odd shopper rating under 18.5 points on Alperen Şengün. So if he's there, you can find that one on Fliff right now, actually. So minus 120 on the 18.5 points is the best line out there. Actually, Hard Rock, if you're a Florida person, minus 110 on those points right now for Şengün. Even better payout for you if that's what you're looking for. Then we've got the Knicks side. They are a unique team today. OG Anunoby already out. Josh Hart upgraded to probable. So we have no Anunoby. I'm just going to throw it to you here because we don't have ownership to the Knicks. I don't mean like we don't have the numbers. I mean it's just not coming in. 9% to Towns is the most we have. So who do you think is starting in OG Anunoby's place?
So I would think it could be Achua. Achua came in first last game out for when Anunoby didn't play in the second half.
Yeah.
So it could be Achua. I would assume it would be McBride historically, but the way they played these guys, I kind of thought they would get the same kind of minutes benefit, and it does seem like Stokastic is kind of playing it out that same way. Whoever starts, I think Achua and McBride just get a good amount more minutes, but I don't know there's one that plays more than 30. And Stokastic has these guys both. Achua at 27 minutes, McBride at 26 and change. I think that's about right in terms of how I view it as well. So McBride's a better value, but I'm not sure that he gets you like starter level minutes for the Knicks, which would be where he really has the big upside.
Are you getting anything here? Because right now I've got about 18% of Towns, 10% of Hart, 10% of Brunson, but I didn't really get Achua or McBride, and that's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I only got 4% of McBride, 3% of Achua, which I guess a little bit above the field technically. I'm above on Towns, got him at 11%. And again, that's more like I think some lineups there where you're not paying up all the way for Jokic and SGA. I think you get guys like Towns a little bit more, guys like Cade a little bit more. But no really big stands here. I'm with the field on Brunson. These guys look okay, but there isn't like one big winner here. I think if Achua were not available and you knew you were going to get mid 30s minutes from McBride, he's like a smash. But because you have Achua in, we just saw these guys splitting minutes that were left behind by Anunoby. I just don't think there's a big winner for Anunoby being out like there is in some other spots.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here. I'm happy to get to Towns because I do think this is a pretty interesting matchup, especially if Şengün ends up out. Towns should be in really good shape here. That Steven Adams is not fast enough to keep up with him at this point, so he might be able to get himself some good looks. Although matchup against Tari Eason might not exactly be the most fun thing in the world for Towns. You'll get at least a long defender out there. But yeah, I thought I would get a little bit more precious, but he's already 5,100. McBride's not that good of a per minute guy at 4K and doesn't really fall into enough here that makes him look that interesting. So I think I'm going to be focused on Towns, Brunson, and Hart. And if I'm going to be getting those three guys, I'm kind of happy no matter what happens.
Yeah, McBride would need to play like Anunoby minutes to be playable,
Yeah.
and he's not going to play Anunoby minutes, it looks like.
We have an 8 odd shopper rating on Karl Anthony Towns under 3.5 assists right now, 4.5% EV. That's the best play that we've looked at. That's sitting out there on FanDuel at this moment. Although I will add, we have had some historical ROI issues on the assist plays, so keep your eye on it. But 8 odd shopper rating is no joke. If you start filtering down your portfolio for that, it might look a little bit different. San Antonio Spurs, 3-point dogs in Memphis, 239 total. One of the highest totals. I have it as the fastest paced matchup on the slate. San Antonio, though, could look very different by the time we get to this game because Victor Wembanyama is questionable. Oh, and by the way, Trey Jones not on the team anymore, making his way to Chicago, I believe. 20% ownership is coming into Wemby at 10,800. 20% ownership is coming into Devin Vassell, who did not need to be traded to acquire De'Aaron Fox. Then we get single digits to Castle, Paul, Keldon, Sohan. I am meeting the field right now on Wemby and Vassell. 20% of both. Happy to have it. But if Wemby ends up out, we're finding even more value here.
Yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of Wemby as well, and I'm with you. Like, if Wemby's out, then Bassey's going to have a lot more clear paths of playing because Zach Collins no longer on the roster either as the results of that trade, so that helps him out a little bit. But Wemby as it is, I usually don't get a ton of Wemby, but I'm getting him at 17% today, so a little bit above the field. It's just there's so much ownership going Jokic and SGA's way. I think it's logical to get some kind of different pay-up options here. The value feels a little more concrete, whereas the pay-up options, like there's great projections on Jokic and SGA, with some of the guys missing from their respective teams, but if you're just trying to target upside, like just getting a mix of the pay-up options makes sense. And I'll get some Wemby in here, so I'm happy to have that. Everything else here, low on Vassell, have 14% compared to the field's 24. I just don't think that he's as elite of a play as it seems like the field does, but clearly decent projection, shooting guard, small forward, I get being there some amount. I'm low on Castle as well, low on Chris Paul. I'm under on all the guys from the Spurs besides Wemby, which frankly is probably how I'd like to have it. So yeah, the Memphis matchup, pace up spot, high total here as well. So if Wemby's out, I think the guys will look a lot better as it is. I think it's mostly Wemby for me here. And I don't love the Vassell chalk. I think it's kind of confusing.
How much 4K Charles Bassey do you think you end up with if Wemby ends up out? We're talking about a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy who, in the most recent game with no Victor Wembanyama, played 27 minutes. If you knew you were getting 27 minutes, he is going to be pretty heavily owned.
Yeah, I would think that he would be then a better play than a Steven Adams type, assuming that Şengün were out. I mean, he would be a play, I think, for me, with how my projections work, I'd probably get him in ungodly. I'd probably get him in almost every lineup. So I think that would, and I'd be okay with it, honestly. Wish he were like 3K min, but like 4K for him. I'm at a 1.2 fantasy point per minute pace this year. Like, he's been really good, and there's nobody else now coming for him for minutes because like the other bigs haven't been in the rotation really.
Yeah, I mean, if you say that he's a 1.1 guy and you only give him 24 minutes, that's 26.4 fantasy points. At 4K, that's 6.6x his salary. I think you'd be projecting him for more playing time than that. He's going to look incredible if Wemby ends up out. So be ready for that news if we get no Wemby. But for right now, I'm just going to play some Wemby. I also got to give a shout out to friend of the program, former guy that popped up on these shows. Shout out Sal Vetri in chat right now, dropping 50 gifted subs into YouTube. Wow. You guys got hooked up today from Sal. Haven't talked to Sal on a show for a very long time, but good old days, man. Good old days. So shout out to Sal for that one. Enjoy those gifted subs, everybody.
Hey, go check out Sal's Twitter too. He's got different handles now. I'll just give Sal the plug back. But yeah, I'm surprised to see Sal coming in with that. But Sal's got a marketing strategy, I'm sure. It's part of it. But shout out Sal. I love Sal. One of my faves.
Early Stokastic crossovers there.
He's
Memphis
been on Splash
Grizzlies.
Play too. I've
There
got
you
some
go.
shows of them. Yeah. Sal pays it forward. He keeps in touch.
Absolutely. Memphis Grizzlies. So Ja Morant is questionable. Brandon Clark is questionable. Desmond Bain is already out. We're getting 14% ownership to Triple J and nothing to the rest of this team. 5% to Kennard, Wells, and Aldama. What are you getting here for Memphis, and how do you think it changes if we lose Brandon Clark and or Ja Morant?
So getting a little bit over the field on Aldama right now, which is not like a stand I'm proud of to say here, but getting him at 11%, Fritz the Field's 9, a little bit under on Jaren Jackson, a little bit under on Luke Kennard. I think again, there's just better values on the slate relative to what the situation is if Morant is in. If Morant's out, I think Jackson becomes much more of a priority play at 8,300. Really, that's the biggest thing for me here. He'd be someone you go out of your way to get. He'll be one of the guys that soaks up a lot of your salary, I think, in a lot of your lineups. So as it is right now, 13%-ish for the field or 12% for the field, that's fine. But I think he would be like a completely different play if you had Morant out. Kennard would look better as well. Pippen would become closer to playable, but I'm not sure he'd be as popular as people always want Pippen to be. I think Jackson would be the biggest one here. Jackson and Kennard, I expect get the big boost, but Jackson, I think, would be a play that would project for like high 40s, 50-ish fantasy points. It would be borderline unavoidable on the slate.
Yeah, he will look damn good if we end up losing Morant here. Increased minutes to Kennard's certainly look good, but he's already 4,800. I have about 10%. To me, that's sort of where he should be. Like if Brandon Clark ends up out, you probably just get some minutes for Jay Huff. These guys are just going to spread everything out. I don't think that we're going to end up with like overwhelming value, even if Morant and Clark end up out. Like, yes, is Scottie Pippen going to look a little bit better? Probably. I don't think he's going to look incredible. They're going to play 10, 11 dudes here no matter what happens.
Yeah, I
I
think it just
hate
makes
it.
the good guys look better. It's the same page.
Agreed. I agree. I agree. Do we have anything interesting on the Grizzlies side for bets right now? Memphis Grizzlies, two sub one odd shopper ratings right now, so we just don't really have much popping up in Memphis. Those Q tags for Ja are probably a bit of a limiting factor. We do have the Sacramento Kings fresh off of their trade of De'Aaron Fox. 5-point dogs in Minnesota, 221 total. So Kings will not have De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, they won't have Kevin Huerter, and Zach LaVine not available for this one either. But we are getting some ownership here. 10% to Sabonis, 20 to DeMar DeRozan, 10 to Keegan Murray, 20 to Malik Monk, and 20 to Keon Ellis. These guys look awesome. They're shorthanded. These starters are going to play a ton. Ellis is cheap for the role that he's going to have. I have 20% of all 5 of these guys. So give me the Kings in any order. I'll take all of it.
I'm low on Keegan Murray out of the group, but mostly with you here. I'm getting 25% of Keon Ellis, getting 23% of DeMar DeRozan, 23% of Malik Monk, 11% of Domantas Sabonis as well, who I feel like is going kind of quietly under-owned here at 8% projected ownership when he's had probably the biggest upside in the team in multiple situations over the last few weeks. But basically, the shortened rotation, it would look a lot better if they were playing somebody who wasn't Minnesota, I feel like. I think I'd get more shots in these guys, but the Fields ownership doesn't feel bad. The Keon Ellis one feels a little bit high to me with some of the value we're opening up with Ryan Rollins in particular. But Ellis is going to play good minutes, and he's produced about 0.85 fantasy points per minute in court time without Fox this year. So, it's getting a little bit crowded usage-wise still with those guys, even without Fox. But I think Ellis, he's okay playing enough minutes, and I'm not crazy about him, though.
He's just too cheap, and they don't have bodies. Like it's not like they're trying to play Mason Jones and Isaac Jones and Doug McDermott all that much. I expect Ellis to just get 30 here pretty much without even worrying about it. They're just out of humans, at least for right now. But any one of those starters, I think, look just perfect today. There's too much going around. You remove Fox from the team, people can get their usage back. It's not going to look all that great once LaVine gets back in the realm of it all. But for today, if I'm ranking them, Ellis, DeRozan, Murray, Sabonis, Monk. I'm always oddly low on Monk, but yet he's my most exposed guy. So it's an interesting push-pull.
He gains the most from Fox not being out there because he becomes like a legit point guard. I mean, his assist rate of 27% on the year is not bad, but 32% for him with 26% usage without Fox, like that's him legit kind of being ball dominant in a way that maybe levels out with DeRozan over the course of more time. But I think Monk just becomes he probably becomes the best per minute per dollar player, I guess, out of the group. So I'm not crazy about how DeRozan's played this year. So yeah, I'm with you on Monk.
All righty. Yeah, Keon Ellis, just from a value perspective, even though we're going to have a little bit more in Milwaukee, is just going to look good today, assuming he gets that start. Minnesota, on the other hand, a little bit weird. By the way, no positive EV plays for the Kings right now on Portfolio EV Tool. But we got to talk about Minnesota because Dante DiVincenzo already out. Julius Randle already out. Anthony Edwards questionable. Naz Reid questionable. Now we're only getting ownership right now to Gobert at 10%, Reid at 10%, Ant at 15%. But if one of Reid or Edwards are out, this is going to get pretty wild here for Minnesota. How are you handling the Wolves?
Yeah, right now, assuming that Edwards and Reed are in, I'm getting 11% of Edwards, so with the field there, getting 10% of Reed, so the barest of minimum above the field there, but basically with it. A little bit low on Gobert, but if those guys are out, with Randall being out, you're talking about, I mean, what, like 75, 80% of the possessions, and those guys are on the court just being gone and up for grabs. And I would assume you get your boost for Jaden McDaniels, would assume you get I guess a theoretical boost for Gobert as much as he can be boosted usage wise. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, I think become like a lot bigger parts of the slate. And Dillingham in particular has been good enough on the year at his price tag. I'd want to take that shot. But Alexander Walker still cheap enough as well. He's kind of in that $4,800 not value, but not really priced up where he should be spot. But if these guys are all in, I think they're all like 10% or less plays. If Edwards and Reed are out, I think you have to relook at everybody again here and they'll look a lot better, even though this team at that point is like just a dog shit team if you get those two guys out as well.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Like, let's say Ant is out. Who do you think's starting?
Conley, Alexander Walker, Reed, Gobert, McDaniels. Did I mention one guy too many?
That sounds right to me.
Yeah.
I think I would agree there as well. And then, if Reed is out, but Edwards is in, I'm guessing we probably get what? Ant, McDaniels, Gobert, Walker, Conley. Like, I think they just move McDaniels to the 4 in that scenario. And then if they're both out, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. Like, I mean, is Ingles going to get in the rotation or Josh Minot?
Minot, I would imagine, plays. Jalen Clark has obviously been playing as of late. I think we see him. Luka Garza becomes the backup center, just straight to Rudy Gobert, no matter what, because they're not going to have much choice. Rob Dillingham probably grabs a couple extra minutes here today, and people might actually be able to click that name. But yeah, I mean, Q tag Ant, Q tag Reed, already missing 2 rotation guys. We might have some fun here in Minnesota. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. No bets, though. 1 odd shopper rating to Ant right now is the only thing we have. So nothing too crazy out there for people just grabbing them. Anything else for Minnesota?
No, I think that's it. Just definitely one of those where you don't really know enough right now. If it could be completely different by the time we get to lock and even live before lock in a couple minutes.
Yep. That's what live before lock and playback are for, guys. That's what we're getting there. Let's hit the big read for today. And that isn't Naz Reid, by the way. That's not the big read. That is the read, but it's not the big read. The big read that we have for today, SB75. I know that's not what's on the banner right now, but SB75 will get you the Portfolio EV tool, which we've been talking about throughout the show, for 75% off. This is our big run up to the Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl is like the coolest event to bet on in terms of props. There's a million different things that you could hit up for the Super Bowl, but we're covering everything here with this promo code. To get in for 75% off for your first payment, you're paying for 25% of the cost for your first month to get market-based approach to beating books, expected value, expected win rates, parlay builders, odds boost calculators, mass entries, portfolio management, odds data for trend analysis, if that's something you want to look at, pick'em sites and sports books. You get it all. The promo code is here. The link is here. Please go ahead and sign up right now. Milwaukee Bucks. Last I looked, were 15-point dogs. That might have gone up. It's 227 total here against OKC. The Milwaukee Bucks happen to be without a couple players today, so be aware that it's a different looking Bucks team. No Giannis, no Dame, no Middleton, no Portis, and potentially no Brook Lopez, who is questionable. And let's be very clear here. It seems like he's not going to play, because why in the world would you? He's 4% owned. I'm at least a little interested in him if he's in, but that seems scary. 20% ownership to Taurean Prince, 20 to AJ Green. Call it 10 to Gary Trent and Andre Jackson. Oh, by the way, there's also 80 to Ryan Rollins, who's 3,100 point guard only, likely playing 28 plus minutes as the starting point guard for the Bucks. There's no way to get away from Ryan Rollins, correct?
Yeah, I've got him in 89% of my lineups. Like I was early on the Ryan Rollins train when he played his first start. Had only played a little bit of time for the Bucks, and he went nuts as a chalky-ish play those days. I want to be right back there again. He's a really good producer, gets some assists. The usage has obviously come down a lot throughout the course of the year because he's playing kind of bullshit minutes now. But 18.4% usage, 13% assist rate, 0.84 fantasy points per minute playing in this rotation where he's clearly not a key guy. When he gets to be the key guy, he gets shots off. And I was on my Splash Play channel before this. People are like, AJ Green. And like, he looks fine as well. You can play whatever Bucks you want. But Ryan Rollins is like a legit distributor, creator, gets some rebounds. He's a good player. I mean, relatively speaking. So Rollins to me, I think if you're going to tell me I had to put him in every lineup or play him in none, I'd put him in every lineup.
Yep.
The guy that I do want to talk about though, and I'm curious your thoughts. So like if Brook Lopez is going to be out, they have no bigs left because Liam Robbins is with the G League. I think Tyler Smith has to play. Like Stokastic already has him for 17. If Lopez is out, I would think he plays high 20s, at least mid 20s. And he's been a 1.2 fantasy point minute producer this year. It's only been about 45 minutes. So again, like the small sample size, but he's been a good player for the G League Ignite before. Like he does stuff that nobody else in the team can do, can knock down some threes. I think Rollins and Tyler Smith are the guys I expect to be the big winners here from Milwaukee. But right now with Lopez projected in, like Smith's not getting the full outlay.
Yeah.
But like I like Smith at 3K minimum and power forward. Like he looks like a great play to me as it is.
Yeah, power forward eligible 3K. He's going to be massively owned if we end up getting Lopez out. It's basically him and I don't know, Torian Prince as the nominal backup center. Chris Livingston, whatever that is, also profiles mildly big, but he's 6'6". They don't have a ton of options. I mean, it's Tyler Smith and then Torian Prince, I believe, is the next tallest guy on the team at 6'8". So we're going to have a lot here. I got 30% of AJ Green. I've got 20 of Gary Trent. I've got 30 of Torian Prince. I've got 10 of Andre Jackson right now. I'm going to have a lot of Milwaukee, but it starts very clearly with Ryan Rollins. Who's your second priority?
My second priority would be AJ Green right now. Got him at
Yeah.
25%. So, yeah, like not a huge stand there, but at 3,300, he can knock down some threes. He's been 65% true shooter on the year. The issue is like he does absolutely nothing else on a court. I guess I would have him today projected for a few rebounds, a few assists, but like that's really the big issue. The rest of these guys, like honestly, I don't think look great. I am above the field on Torian Prince, getting 19% there, getting 11% Andre Jackson, 14% Gary Trent. I'm getting a lot of these guys, but none of them are even close to a tier of ownership like Rollins. I do think Tyler Smith would get to that tier if Lopez were out. Everybody else here, I think you mix in and feel okay about. But if I had like a personal lean, I think it'd be Green still. And Prince does okay. I don't know. Like these guys are all like okay. There isn't anybody that's great. Rollins, I think, is great. The rest of them, I think, are all kind of similar versions of the same play with more minutes.
Yeah, I'm a bigger proponent of AJ Green, I think, than you, but nothing crazy. He's in 30% of my stuff, but I'd like Gary Trent's fine. Andre Jackson's fine. DeLon Wright's kind of sneaky, I think, today if he's not really pulling much ownership. You know, because he can play alongside Rollins at least a little bit if they need to. You know, somebody's got to close in this game. Like, does DeLon Wright close in the blowout over Rollins? Probably. Rollins has been a part of the regular rotation, so maybe we get a fourth quarter of DeLon Wright, which could get a little interesting. So I do want to keep my eye there, but yes, we need that Brook Lopez news because if Tyler Smith ends up being a thing we could click on, he'll be one of the most important value plays of the day.
And I think still playable as it is, even if Lopez plays, because like frankly,
Yeah.
they're going to get their ass kicked. Like, and he's going to get minutes, and he's already projected for 17 anyway. So like, I think Tyler Smith, no matter what, I would allot some ownership there.
All right. On the OKC side of this one, we do also have injury news here. No Alex Caruso, no Cason Wallace, no good Jalen Williams. So we're getting 20% ownership to Shea, 25 to Aaron Wiggins at 5,300, a little over 10 to Isaiah Joe, and then a little bit coming into Isaiah Hartenstein right now. How do you want to manage an 11K Shea Gilgeous-Alexander without the second best player on the team?
I want to play him above the field. He's averaged 1.8 fantasy points per minute in almost 1,200 possessions this year without Jalen Williams. He basically absorbs a lot of the usage, a lot of the assist rate. Over the weekend, he didn't quite get as much as the rates would have you believe, where over the course of the season, he's averaged 41.5% usage in court time without Jalen Williams, 34% assist rate, 1.8 fantasy points per minute, while shooting 66% true shooting, so shooting really well during that period. Over the weekend, though, we saw Aaron Wiggins get about 27% usage in all of his stints when he was out there. So he kind of became full Jalen Williams in a way that I don't think the projections will capture. And if he does kind of do that same thing he did over the weekend again, where he's getting a lot of shots up, it does kind of hurt SGA's haul a little bit. But I still think SGA is the number 2 player on the slate. Like it's Jokic, it's him. Just 1.8, like in enough of a sample size without Jalen Williams is a huge number. And Milwaukee's going to do nothing to stop him. Your big risk is just that the other Thunder guys go nuts, and then he doesn't hit a ceiling. But he looks great. I have him in 25% of my lineups.
Love him. Happy to get there. No problems paying up for him. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants out here against this makeshift Milwaukee team. Wiggins looks good. I have a bit of Joe. I don't really have much else. I thought I would get a little bit of Dort here, but he's up to 4,900 now. I don't think there's all that much value left for OKC. I want to keep it pretty locked into Wiggins, SGA, and Joe.
Yeah, Wiggins too. Like, I mean, again, if people miss the weekend slates, which I know happens, people tune out during the weekend. 60 fantasy points over the weekend for Wiggins, and he really did play like a full Jalen Williams kind of role. And he's already been on the year about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. And without Jalen Williams on the court, we're talking closer to 1 fantasy point per minute. I think people may question him as chalk here, and I don't think he's bad chalk. Like he's one of few guys here in that 5K range where the price tag's coming up. And I think I'm willing to chase Wiggins here. I have him in a third of my lineups.
All righty. Anything else for OKC?
No, I got a little Isaiah Joe, basically flat with the field there. Low on Hartenstein, even though I have about 2 fantasy points more in projection than Stokastic, but I think that's because there's so many better center plays relative to value and maybe projection as well. But Hartenstein's not a bad play either. And when you have this much ownership going to SGA and to Aaron Wiggins, maybe a Dort or a Hartenstein is your kind of lever against that.
We got a 5 odd shopper rating on SGA under 6.5 assists right now. That's sitting out there on FanDuel. If you want to try to grab it, very clearly the best line that's available. SGA under 1.5 threes made is sitting at a 2 odd shopper rating. And the 3-point recommendations with historical ROI is sitting at 7%. So that seems like one we probably want to check out here. The New Orleans Pelicans are double-digit underdogs in Denver, 241 total. This is the highest, or tied for the highest total on today's slate. Pelicans are just doomed. Your boy DeJounte Murray done for the year. His leg exploded, so no more Achilles for him. Sucks. Hate seeing it. Jordan Hawkins is available. Daniel Tice is out for this one. Pelicans are getting very little love. 10% to Zion, 10% to Alvarado, very little else. Alvarado went from somebody that I thought it was just going to be in like 40% of lineups today to just being like a guy. What do you like for the New Orleans Pelicans here?
Yeah, I'm with the field on Alvarado. I'm with you too. I'm a little bit surprised Stokastic has the minutes as low as they do for him at 27, but there's enough bodies in there, especially with Hawkins being in, that I get how that would happen, even though in my mind it's like, he's probably going to play mid-30s minutes. I mean, he can get a little bit higher, I think, than that projection, but there's no guarantee he does. And frankly, from both my chat on my channel before the show and also what I've seen around the industry, I think people are going to play Alvarado a little more if they're hand-picking lineups than they probably should. So going not crazy above the field here, I think makes sense for me. I like Zion. I know you mentioned the strategy show, or Josh mentioned the strategy show this morning, like a little bit concerned for big fat Zion going into a, an altitude situation. I'll take that shot at under 10% ownership. He's been a beast overall, 40% usage, 40% assist rate, and not a big enough sample size. But that's how it's been this year of court time without Ingram, without DeJounte Murray. The offense is very heliocentric for him when anybody's out. And I think Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum will get theirs, but like Zion is going to do a lot of stuff out there. He's averaged 1.7 fantasy points without those guys. I'd have him around there today. I think Zion's a good tournament shot. A little bit above on Trey Murphy as well. I think there are okay plays here, not as much of a priority as the Denver side's going to be, but like there's nice tournament options here, including Zion, I think.
Absolutely. I actually have 18% of Zion. I hate every bit of it, but I'll ride with Zion for a little here. I can handle it. I don't have much else though. A couple shares of Trey Murphy, a couple shares of Alvarado. But the most I have of anybody here is Zion Williamson. So I am going against my gut as of right now. Wow. To go against his gut, that's a lot to go against. It's a
unstoppable force meets an immovable object. That's how that would go.
Boy. And then we get to Denver. Now these guys look great. Russell Westbrook out today. left hamstring strain. Peyton Watson out. And about 10 minutes ago, we got the news Aaron Gordon has been downgraded to questionable. Jamal Murray is 25% owned. Jokic is 40. MPJ is 25. Christian Brown is 10. Aaron Gordon was 20 and in 20% of my lineups. What were you doing with Denver if Aaron Gordon is in?
I was getting him at 23% with a 28-minute projection, which I think feels pretty good. He did bomb his chalk at the end of last week, but now you have a few less blockers there with Watson being out, with Westbrook being out. So I would get to Aaron Gordon again if he goes. The late day downgrade, never a good thing to see though. So
No.
I like that I'm not currently having him in a ton of lineups because I don't want to have to swap too much off of Aaron Gordon and his price tag. But if he plays, he looks good. I think that Michael Porter looks a little bit better to me ownership wise. I'm getting him in 29% of my lineups. The field will own him more though as well. Jamal Murray is the one I'm lowest on here relative to the field. Field's got him in a quarter of their lineup, so I'm getting him at about 15. But Jokic is the one here where I think tonight's a night where you can get to Jokic SGA lineups pretty easily. You could also get to Jokic plus other combos of pay-up options like we talked about throughout this video. But Jokic for most of the day, I had over 70 fantasy points. Now with the total moving and the minutes moving a little bit, have him at 69.8. But like, I don't see how he fails you in the spot. New Orleans, I think, should be competitive enough unless the altitude just gets the better of these guys. Jokic, I think, should be like a priority pay-up option today, which I don't think is a hot take, but like, you have a lot of ownership for these guys. Jokic, though, I would still make sure to get above, and I did. I have him in 45% of my lineups.
Man, I can't believe you think Jokic looks good today. What a stand. This is like you picking home runs and being like, I got Aaron Judge.
Hey, I made Aaron Judge the man he became with us. Those picks
Sure
every
you
day
did.
in the stream. Yeah, I have Jokic for 2 fantasy points per minute today. Like I have him at 2.03, which is insane. That never happens. So that's
too many, but you're close. He's good. He's a really good basketball player. Very well worth every single bit of ownership he's getting. The dude's awesome. Just play Jokic. Don't regret it because he's dope. I'm neutral to the field on Murray. I was neutral to Gordon. This is going to be a really interesting swap spot. I'm glad this is a 9 o'clock start because we're going to be able to move some stuff around here. That's for sure. And I like having a bunch of Aaron Gordon because maybe that'll give me some swaps into that. I don't remember the name of the guy from Milwaukee, but we'll try to get to him. Tyler Smith? Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Some made up dude. That's
Man after my heart.
Value play. Trey Murphy, by the way, 4 odd shopper rating, under 3.5 assists, number 1 play coming out of the Pels. Do we have anything interesting on the Nuggets side right now? And the answer would be no, not a single recommended play. So we get to the final game of the DraftKings slate. The Indiana Pacers, 7-point favorites in Utah. Also a 241 total. Halliburton, 10% owned. Siakam, 15% owned. Miles Turner, around 7. However, Miles Turner is questionable for Miles Turner today. They claim right perineal strain. I claim trade deadline. What do you want to get here for Indy, and how much of Thomas Bryant do you think you end up with if we lose Miles Turner?
The Thomas Bryant thing just comes down to when we get the news. If we get it early enough, I would get a lot of Thomas Bryant playing. I assume like 25-ish minutes in the projections, $3,200 salary. He would look good. I don't know how much I would have, but I would say I'd probably rate him higher than Steven Adams and the other 4K-ish centers we've talked about so far. But I would still have him lower than a Tyler Smith without Lopez. This is an arbitrary rating system we're creating now on the fly. Everything else here I'm low on, nobody above 10%. I have the most Pascal Siakam. The field has the most of him as well. It's a really high total here for this game, I feel like, for Utah's side as well. Utah now full health, so Indiana probably looks better through that prism. I'm not getting here, though, and I do think this is a game where like the swappability you have and the fact the total is so high and the matchup is pretty cushy. I should like Indiana more than I do, and I think the field's a little bit low on them when they kind of give you all the stuff you want to slate like this with swappability and a really nice team total in a soft matchup.
Yeah, I would like to have a little bit more, but I'm right around the field on Halliburton and Siakam. I will definitely be getting to a bunch more of Thomas Bryant if that news happens to come out. But as of right now, I just have a small amount of Turner and not much else for these Indiana Pacers. They don't look as good as I would like them to look, unfortunately. Not enough value. Everybody's playing. But we do have a 9 odd shopper rating on Pascal Siakam, 5% EV, under 1.5 threes, and an 8 odd shopper rating on Miles Turner. Right now, the Pacers look like the best team we've seen in odd shopper. 2 5% EV plays, a 3.5% EV on under 19.5 points for Halliburton, a 2 odd shopper rating on Nemhard's points. There's a lot to like on the Pacers side if you guys want to fire off some bets right now. On the Utah side, 8% ownership to John Collins, 2 to Lauri Markkanen is the next highest number. I have 9 of Collins and 2 of Markkanen. These guys are basically all healthy right now. And with them being healthy, they don't look good.
Yeah, I would say Collins is a little bit cheap for a 1.16 fantasy point per minute. This guy, I have been predisposed to Collins in the past, but he's really the only one I'm getting here. I'm getting him 11%. The field's at 8%, so it's not really a big stand here. Everybody else, you have a full rotation. You have all 4 guards. You have Collier, you have Sexton, you have Keontae and Clarkson off the bench. Like, it's a pretty big squeeze here, but I think Collins is cheap enough to take the shot. Marketing, I could see the theoretical upside, but with the 4 guards in, I don't want to pay that full 7K price tag for him.
Now, I thought I'd get a little bit more marketing because I think he's a little underrepresented, but he's just like a guy now. And we're going to look back at his career and just be like, why the hell did they not trade him this offseason to anyone for a bunch of picks and stuff? His value's never going to be higher. Swing and a miss there by Utah. Anything else for the Jazz? I have nothing here. They're just a really uninteresting team to talk about. They're also tied for the second lowest amount of ownership on the slate.
No, and honestly, 117.5 implied points for the Jazz is pretty good. So, like, if you wanted to make a case for a guy here, you could. I think Collins is the one because he does a little bit of everything, and he's going to be playing enough minutes, around 30. But yeah, really, these guys don't project that well. If you hit on one of them, though, I don't think it'd be crazy because it is really nice total for this game and for the Jazz in particular.
One last promo for you guys. Hit that like button first, but WMPO, you see it on the top of the screen. If you are interested in PGA DFS, you could sneak in to our PGA DFS Sims package if you're interested for 50% off using that promo code right now. PGA DFS is fun. Showdowns are awesome. You get it in and out in one round. Going through sweats on Fridays, getting your sweat on Sunday. PGA DFS, man. If you want to do it, the best way to do it is to use our simulation tools. You could use this promo code all the way up until Sunday, which is February 9th. If you use that promo code WMPO, you will get half off any PGA product that you choose on the DFS side. It's a hell of a deal. Not too much to talk about in these games. These are FanDuel only. Orlando, Golden State, Magic are 3-point dogs in Golden State, 210 total. 10% ownership to Paolo. 10% ownership to Franz, no ownership anywhere else, no Jalen Suggs. These guys are incredibly difficult to get to, but if you're playing the Magic, you're playing one of the 2 real players, and you're not playing anybody else.
Yeah, I would have a slight lean towards Franz, I think, relative to projection, but they both, I think, Banchero and Franz, you can take your shots at on FanDuel. Anthony and Black, I don't think on DK late slate or FanDuel, I'm dying to get there. Orlando, it's not a great total here. Really, the spot with Golden State feels like Orlando's going to muck it up. So really nothing, honestly, nothing for me would stand on this game. But the Orlando side, I think it's Franz and Banchero and more so Franz.
Vasily Micic available to play. It actually looks even worse for Golden State. 3% ownership to Steph, 2% to Wiggins. Do you want anything for this team today?
No, I think relative to FanDuel, that seems appropriate. Like, you're not getting great values here. Even DK late slate, they don't look that good. I think Wiggins looks a little bit better for the DK late slate, but yeah, really, with having Draymond back in, presumably, and still having Kuminga out, just nothing stands out that much for the team at this point. And Orlando's such a down pace quality defense. Like, maybe Golden State does something unique here, but the total here is really not supporting that at all.
There's absolutely nothing here of interest. It's crazy how awful they look.
They need a
crazy.
trade.
They do. They really do. I have 6% optimal on Steph. There's nothing I want from the Golden State side. And then you get to Phoenix and Portland. Phoenix is 5-point favorites in Portland, 228 total. 8% ownership to Booker, 6 to Durant, 3 to Simons. Those are the highest numbers for both teams. Yeah, you can get Booker or Durant. I wouldn't play anybody else from Phoenix. You want to play Kamara or Simons or Grant because they're contrarian? Sure. But these final 2 games at 10 o'clock for FanDuel are both awful.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. Like, if it weren't FanDuel, Nick Richards, I think, would not be a terrible play. Ayton, I don't think it'd be a terrible play, but I don't want to give up center spots on FanDuel for those guys either. So yeah, for me, I think these games, again, if you're playing the DK late slate, I would say Nick Richards projects well enough. Grayson Allen projects well enough. O'Neal projects well enough. Ayton projects well enough. But like overall for FanDuel, there's so many better games of the slate.
There really, really, really are, which means 10 games up, 10 games down. Spags, tell the people where to find you.
You can see me every day before this stream at Splash Play NBA. I run through my projections, deal with the fact that data is always moving around at that time frame, but please go check it out and follow me at Chris Spags. Hit the like button, guys, and good luck. It should be a fun slate. Go Ryan Rollins, go Tyler Smith, go the guys that we didn't want to play in a million years when the day started.
There we go, everybody. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. Hit that like button on your way out the door, but stay right here. You don't have to change streams. It's coming up right now.
Interesting.
What is happening, everyone? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. And this is going to be my last show for a couple of days because I've got a colonoscopy scheduled, which is not code for being taken into prison and investigated and all of that. It's an actual pre-existing colonoscopy that I booked months ago. So I'm going to be out for tomorrow and Wednesday. Tomorrow doing the prep and Wednesday doing the procedure. So Eric is going to be hosting the next couple of days. Just kind of want to let you guys know so you don't, because I know what's going to happen, Eric. If I just show up and don't, if I just don't show up tomorrow and don't say anything, people are going to assume the worst and conspiracies will be afoot. So just kind of wanted to lay that out there. So last show for me for a couple of days. Do me a favor as you're watching this, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got an interesting NBA slate, and of course, it wouldn't be the start of Live Before Lock without injury news breaking right in between shows. And not only did we get a couple of players out for the Houston Rockets, they were kind enough, Eric. I don't know why teams are never this nice to us.
No.
Not only do we know that Fred VanVleet and Alperen Şengün are out for the Rockets tonight, we found out that Tari Eason and Jayshawn Tate are going to be starting in their place. That's not the lineup I was expecting tonight.
No, it's definitely not. Jayshawn Tate played really, really well in that one game. Can't remember who. It was Bellman and me on a Thursday night. It was up against Atlanta last week, and he ends up playing 25 minutes, puts up like 27 and change. You wanted him instead of Cam Whitmore. I think this one's interesting because we're going to get a 3,200 Tate. It's also weird that they're not going to start Steven Adams, but I guess, whatever. Like, we're just kind of, I don't even know what to think about this lineup because it's just not even remotely close to anything that I was thinking that they would roll out. So I'm kind of updating stuff on the side. 4,300 Steven Adams off the bench, probably not going to be something that shows up. Jeff Green, 3K. I think he'll play, but I doubt that he's going to be somebody that shows up for me whatsoever. I mean, this is just kind of Tari Eason, good fantasy producer, good defender, going to be out there for a boatload of minutes. Probably ends up getting the cat assignment more so. And I don't know. I'm just kind of like piecing through this, and I'm curious what the Knicks are going to start on the other side because this doesn't seem like a lineup where you would end up rolling out Precious Achiuwa. I think that this might actually maybe this is kind of why they put it out so early is that, hey, we want to kind of lure you into starting Miles McBride or something of that nature. I'm not sure what to make of it. Do you have any takes whatsoever? Because again, I'm just kind of waiting for stuff to update.
Well, so we definitely know, obviously, the Rocket side of the game. I hadn't thought too much about how that's going to influence what the Knicks are going to be doing with their starting unit. I assume that it's going to be Precious Achiuwa. So
that's what I assume too, but
it could be different, especially because we see Tibbs do weird shit when guys are out. And it's funny, OG Anunoby historically has been a player that's had a lot of injury issues. You would think that of all the players to get put into a full season of Tom Thibodeau as the coach, you go like, oh, well, for sure, this is not going to be good for his long-term health. Somehow, OG Anunoby, he's been as healthy as he's been like the entire season. I tend to think it's going to be Precious Achiuwa who starts, but I'm not uber confident in that or anything.
Yeah, and I mean, he's 5,100 for the DraftKings slate. I don't really care about him. I care about if somehow, some way, Miles McBride at 4K ends up starting. We have an eternal amount of value. We just got more value. We have mid-range value. We have cheap value. I would even call Jokic value to some extent at 12-3 in his current circumstances with no Russell Westbrook on the floor. This is just a wild, wild slate. So I'm excited to kind of lean into this one.
Yeah, and let's see if we have the projections updated for the Houston Rockets, because if they are, I would like to go over them for you guys. Not quite yet. Should be coming shortly, though. I assume I'm going to end up liking Jayshawn Tate a lot. He's somebody who generally in the past I've gotten to when he's been put in these kinds of situations. Maybe this will be different because he is so cheap, but oftentimes when he makes spot starts or he's in elevated positions, he doesn't pull a ton of ownership, but I will see now that he's been confirmed as the starter. Maybe just will end up being really chalky. $3,200 on DraftKings for him. Over on FanDuel, we've got Jayshawn Tate at $3,800. So I'm interested to see what ends up happening there with the projections, and we'll look at that in a second. Also, if you guys have any questions for us, hit us up in the Discord channel. It is something that I'm always on the lookout for. But let's start talking about the uber chalk spots on the slate that are not going to change, Eric. Most notably, the Ryan Rollins situation. So we've got pretty much everybody out for the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. And as a result, we've got Ryan Rollins pretty much breaking the ownership projections. He's projected for 89% ownership. He's probably not going to be quite that popular, but it's safe to assume he's going to be the most popular player overall in the entire slate. The reason why, Milwaukee Bucks today, Giannis is out, Middleton's out, Damian Lillard's out, Bobby Portis is doubtful. I don't know why Brook Lopez is questionable. That's something I think is very, just rule Brook Lopez out, I would think at this point. Why are you playing him? So my assumption is that Brook Lopez also doesn't end up playing, but just kind of an educated guess at this point. I want to start by asking about Ryan Rollins. What do you make of him at his price point relative to his crazy ownership? Like cash games, he's for sure a lock. We're all playing him in cash. But what would you do with him in tournaments when he's as popular as he is?
Yeah, I've got him for 82% ownership right now in my lineups. Top 150. I'm playing. I don't know how this worked out, but I reserved 20. I ended up having 22 lineups in this $5 or whatever. And now I was like, oh, I'll just, figure out exactly how many lineups I want to put in. Nope, that thing filled way earlier than I thought. So here we are. I'm just kind of rolling with, it seems as right around 80% of him is probably going to be the way it comes out in the wash. And I think no matter how I try to nerf his projection. Like, hey, maybe he has like a 20th percentile outcome. If he still puts up like 22, 23 fantasy points at 3,100, there's just so many ways that he still shows up in the winning lineup. Plus, I think a lot of our big studs that we want to get to, Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama, if he ends up playing basketball here, SGA is at point guard, Kate Cunningham point guard, but like, I think the center position is just loaded. I think you got Kat, Sabonis, Wemby, Jokic. They all look insanely good. I think a majority of my spend ups are going to kind of come from that spot. And I think it's just kind of by default, just giving me more Rollins than, I think that there's a case to be made for just playing him in every single lineup that you roll out today and just trying to figure out where to deviate elsewhere.
Yeah, I right now have Ryan Rollins at 97% of lineup, so not quite all of them, but it's about as close to all of them as I could get without having him in all of my lineups. This is a piece of chalk at $3,100 that I'm not going to be getting away from today. And then something else too, if we guess his actual ownership, it's one of these situations where a couple of things are happening. First off, he just projects so absurdly well relative to his price point, and stuff like simulations and ownership projections is very data based. There are going to be some people who just don't know who Ryan Rollins is, doesn't click on his name or whatever. So his actual ownership, like I said, is going to be the most popular player on the slate. But I don't know, what's a fair guess? Like 70%, Eric, especially when you consider the $5 typically is a little bit softer field. 70% fair guess?
It's exactly what I was going to say is that, that tournament specifically, I mean, it's going to be a lot softer than normal. We've seen ownership come in underneath these ownership projections pretty routinely by 10, 15%. Mm-hmm. I would say 70 is like on maybe the high end even. I'll go 68% just to like figure out exactly where we're going to land. It's still a lot of lineups. He's still going to be, if he turns an ankle, it's going to be apocalyptic over on X today. But I think no matter what, he's just somebody who should be absorbing a large percentage of your... Again, there's a world where maybe he doesn't start. I think that world is pretty impossible with Dame out, but again, pay attention to news. I think we're more than likely our starting unit is Rollins, Green, Jackson, Prince, and then if Lopez plays for whatever reason, sweet. Otherwise, I think Tyler Smith is probably the guy that you want to get to a ton of. It's weird having him at just power forward. We also have Pat Connaughton, Marion Beauchamp. We've seen so many ways where they just could try to go super, super small ball here going up against OKC. They kind of have to do it by default if they're going to have Portis and Lopez and Giannis out. But no matter what, this is just a team that's going to absorb a ton of our ownership if the lineups break out a certain way.
And then I want to ask you related to Brook Lopez, because it seems like based on what you just said that you're on the same page as me, assuming Brook Lopez is more likely to sit than end up playing. I really don't understand just why is he even questionable on the injury program? They've already ruled out everybody else. But here's the other thing I'm struggling with, Eric. Who the hell starts if Brook Lopez is out?
Yeah, I think it's Tyler Smith. I think he's probably the most likely. He's not a big body by any means, but you just kind of go through the roster. And I was doing that in Dunks and Threes a little bit earlier once, we got the onslaught of news. I actually put out in a betting thread over on X at Eric Lindquist, just kind of breaking stuff down the way I do from a betting perspective. I was pretty confident this was a punt spot entirely for them. But working through the rotations is kind of a completely different thing. Tyler Smith, I think, has like the biggest opportunity to step into the starting lineup. He's 6'11". He was a G League Ignite guy back with the Thompson brothers, and he seems to be okay. He's going to get completely slaughtered by Isaiah Hartenstein, but can Hartenstein play enough minutes to potentially have it even matter? I don't know, but I think more than likely they probably roll him out. Liam Roberts is 7 foot, but he's not very good, like at all. He's a 25-year-old. He's in the G League too. I doubt we get a report on anything where he would get upgraded. I think it's pretty set in stone that he's not going to be with the team for today. So pay attention to that news. If for whatever reason he ends up making a surprise appearance, that might put a wrench in it. But I think Tyler Smith more than likely to start at the 5.
And then on the other side, in the event that Brook Lopez ends up playing, what's your level of interest in him? Because when you consider all the guys who are out for the Milwaukee Bucks, you have to figure that he's somebody who would see an elevated usage rate. Is the game going to be competitive? Pretty dubious. The Bucks are 16.5-point underdogs in this game. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised it's not even a wider spread when you look at who it is that they're going to have available for today. But if Brook Lopez ends up playing, any interest in him in DFS? Because you would think he has an opportunity for usage.
Yeah, I mean, he's only a 0.83 DraftKings points per guy per minute, but obviously you're missing the 3 highest usage guys in Bobby Portis, Damian Lillard, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So it's almost kind of a moot point of sorts to kind of say, oh, yeah, I have no interest whatsoever. I think my biggest issue is that you take the three of them off the floor. There's no sample size really to work with. Otherwise, you'd say 53 minutes. He's a 1.63 DraftKings points per minute player, but there's also no Chris Middleton. There's not a lot of ways this game stays competitive. Again, I would be shocked if he ended up starting and playing. I think the other issue I have for this slate specifically is it's going to lean itself towards stars and scrubs and then the mid-range, whether it's Tari Eason, Aaron Wiggins, I think pulling a ton of ownership as well. I think they're looking so good from a point per dollar perspective that utilizing a center spot on Brook Lopez, you would really need a ceiling game. Even at 5,600, you would really need him to go nuts against the best defensive center, I believe, in the NBA, and Isaiah Hartenstein. Yeah, he'll pull him away from the basket. Yeah, Brook Lopez can get hot from three, but man, is that a really, really hard click when you have Jokic, Giannis, Wemby, Sabonis. I'll repeat it again. There's so many ways that I think we would just rather get to that tier of center and not utilize Brook Lopez no matter what.
Anthony Edwards expected to play today, so that is good to know because coming into today, we did have Anthony Edwards as well as Naz Reid listed as questionable. Naz Reid, who ruined many DFS lineups, including almost all of mine the other day. Naz Reid still officially listed as questionable unless an update just came in the last few seconds. But both Naz Reid and Anthony Edwards participated in
expected to play
earlier.
Expected to play Naz Reid. Naz Reid, it came through. Expected to play.
There we go. All right, so they're both in. I was going to say they were both participants in shoot around, so I thought they're more likely to play than sit. Cool. That is something that we no longer have to worry about as far as this slate goes. But here's what we still are waiting for on the injury report, and then we'll look at some updates from the Houston Rockets and the projections. Overall for the day, we still have Victor Wembanyama is questionable. That's obviously a big one. We've got Ja Morant questionable. That's something that's going to end up mattering for today. We've got as well Jordan Poole is questionable. Miles Turner is questionable. Aaron Gordon is questionable. Aforementioned Brook Lopez, he is questionable. Brandon Clark is questionable. So those are our key players that we're looking at on the injury report for tonight. Eric, of all those names, which is the one you have your eye on the most as what could be most impactful to your lineups?
Probably would be Wemby, purely because you're opening up Charles Bassey to be another center play. You're giving all the usage and all the land to just about everybody, but Charles Bassey is 4K. If Charles Bassey is starting at 4K, I'm going to get to like infinity % of him. So I think because of that play specifically, Wembanyama, I mean, I talked about all the expensive centers I would want to get to. I'd still rotate through all of them, but Bassey's an unbelievably good fantasy performer. It's Zach Edey, and it's a tough matchup here, but Memphis on the back-to-back. I got to think it's just Wemby on his own island purely because of that one play.
It's going to be Morant for me because Desmond Bane is already out. So, and obviously, like Wemby matters a lot as well. But in terms of what I think could ultimately end up moving around some of my exposures the most, like if we have no Ja Morant today, in addition to Desmond Bane being out, because in some of these recent games where Morant has sat, the ball's been in Bane's hands a ton. He's also been somebody who's picked up extra usage. He's played some additional minutes. I mean, that Memphis team starts to look pretty thin. I don't know that Jaren Jackson becomes one of the top plays on the slate because he's already priced up so much, but you get some of these other role players who, like, does Scottie Pippen Jr. end up starting again? Because they've been starting Luke Kennard at point guard, but with Desmond Bane also out, does Pippen become the starting point guard? And then they start Pippen and Kennard in the backcourt together. It's a very live possibility. So he's one of those sorts of guys, Scottie Pippen, that if he does end up starting, he's a really good fantasy producer. He would show up in a ton of lineups for me. So both those injuries, really, really impactful, and two guys who are playing against each other in that 8 p.m. Eastern time slot there. So it's definitely going to be something where we're not going to want to have too many lineup spots taken up early. The good part about that is there aren't that many early locking games either. 2 games at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 1 game at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Any kind of adjustments that you're going to be making in the Sims to account for the players and the key players we just hit on that are questionable in the 8 p.m. Eastern time games.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I just kind of went into the boom bust tool and I kind of looked at what were the plays early on in the day that were pulling the most ownership. I think we all agreed Jonas Valanciunas, if he gets 28, 30 minutes, got up to 30 against Gobert. If that game stays competitive against Charlotte, it has a pretty good chance to. He's probably the main guy to be looking at from that mid-range of center. I find myself bypassing him a little bit purely because I want to spend up at center. I think that's kind of where most of our real quality spend ups are. I won't list them off yet again. Victor Wembanyama would be one of them if he ends up playing. But Cade Cunningham's the other one. I think
Your guy.
routinely, I've just wanted to get to some of these early ceilings. So Cade Cunningham, he's the other guy. Mark Williams and Duran, I'm undercutting a little bit. Duran's somebody that the Sims tool loved yesterday. That ended up working out in a big way. Very curious to see how it pans out again, because we've got him with a ton of positive leverage coming in his direction. He's somebody that's popping yet again on this back-to-back, but I think there's a case to be made for backloading a little bit. Plus, the sneaky one for me is Brandon Clark in that game for Memphis as well. If he ends up sitting and Zach Edey's minutes get somewhat concrete, that could be really fun to be clicking on Zach Edey in tournaments.
Yeah, great fantasy producers. Minutes have been all over the place as of late. He kind of gets played off the court in a lot of these games. But it's one of these really tricky things where you got a guy who's not been great from a real life perspective, but he's such a good fantasy player that if you get to a spot where we start to expect big minutes from Zach Edey, I agree with you, especially if there's no Wemby on the other side of the game, then Zach Edey could really end up eating in that spot. Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, can you pull up the Houston Rockets? Let's look at their updated projections. All right, so we got these on screen right now. We'll look at the DraftKings side of things, then we'll pull up FanDuel afterwards, and this team looks pretty solid, Eric. We've got, let's see, Jalen Green, just under 40 fantasy points, but he's at $7,300, so relative to his price, he looks solid. Tari Eason starting, got him over 30 fantasy points at $5,400. Then we got Cam Whitmore at 21 fantasy points and change at $3,800. And then we got Jayshawn Tate, 20.3 fantasy points at just above the flat min, $3,200. And then Steven Adams, hasn't really playing all that many extended minutes. And now we've also got a little bit of a different look of a starting lineup. So 16 minutes only projected for Steven Adams. That's going to make him difficult to roster at $4,300. What's your first reaction to these projections now that we're looking at the update for the first time?
Yeah, the Jayshawn Tate one is very, very interesting. We have Rollins at 3,100. You're going to get Tate at 3,200. I think the issue I'm kind of running into, and I'm just sorting out my first run of this team, and I think my issue of just playing a ton of Jayshawn Tate is you're kind of bringing Jokic along for the ride in all of those lineups. And they just feel like you're playing a lot of 5v5s that I'm not a huge fan of on this slate. I think undercutting Tate, because those minutes could really get we'll see how popular he really ends up getting when it's all said and done. But 20 is fine, but he looks so different from a Ryan Rollins to me. Ryan Rollins is going to get a ton of opportunity. He's going to play in blowout run. He's going to have a lot of things that kind of go his direction. I think with Holiday and Shepherd and, even Whitmore, I think there's just ways where Tate doesn't necessarily have to close this game. And that's kind of an issue for me if he ends up pulling a ton of ownership, especially when you consider how many of those 3v3s are going to be showing up, 5v5s, because you're going to be playing a lot of Rollins, a lot of Jokic. You just have so much money to be spending up for there. So we'll see how it's all said and done. I think Tari Eason's probably going to end up being my favorite out of everybody when it's all said and done. He's the best fantasy performer out of that entire group, with both Fred VanVleet and Alperen Şengün off the floor this season. 1.14 DraftKings points per minute player. Very, very limited sample, but we just have a long enough history of him just going out. He gets stuff done on a basketball floor. It's probably going to take and trim a little bit. Going through for Jayshawn Tate here as well, just having another good fantasy performer. Not that Şengün isn't better than what Tari Eason is, but I don't think there's a reason that I would want to get to an eternal amount of Tate.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get to him as a value option. He's nowhere near the level of value option that say a Ryan Rollins. It's not even in the same ballpark. He's nice to have in some lineups. I don't think I'm going to be crazy with my exposure to him based on what his current projection is. I'm curious also, well, first, Jordan, let's look at the FanDuel side of things where we could look at some of the points per dollar projections, how they're different FanDuel, DraftKings. Then we'll pull up the ownership projections to see where those are at. So, ultimately the actual projections are more or less the same for the players on the Houston Rockets. A little bit changed here and there for the different scoring across FanDuel and DraftKings, but the salaries are different. Jayshawn Tate is $3,800 on FanDuel. You got Cam Whitmore at $4,100. Then you got Tari Eason. He remains $5,400 on FanDuel with the small forward and power forward eligibility, especially on FanDuel, Eric. I think the Tari Eason looks like the best guy to be getting to on the team because he looks about the same on FanDuel relative to DraftKings, whereas guys like Jayshawn Tate are quite a bit more expensive.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. I just wanted to point out a really good point that we had in the chat from SMP 1993. He's just saying that Tate at the power forward spot makes for like a really, really good placeholder. And I 100% agree with that. 3,200 for him. And you could turn him into Tyler Smith if Tyler Smith gets the start and is like the only 6'9" or taller player on the entire Milwaukee roster for this game. I think that that's extremely valuable because, barring foul trouble, barring blowout, I think he would play a lot of minutes. And, they would have Taurean Prince. I mean, Beauchamp, definitely not as far as like getting him involved in like any kind of capacity at the 4 or 5. Like, you just work through this roster. If Brook Lopez, I think that might be the one reason that Brook Lopez is like questionable in the injury report. Maybe they are trying to get that one guy, the Liam character that I brought up from the G League, trying to get him there. And if you can't, it's like, well, shit, Brook, you got to play like 12 minutes tonight just because we can't have this Tyler Smith fellow go out there and play like 40 his first game in forever. Like that's like a legitimate way of going about it. It actually makes me intrigued to maybe short Brook Lopez if we get props on him whatsoever before that game.
By the way, because somebody brought it up in the chat, Eason is confirmed starting. We've got that starting
Correct.
unit already laid out to us from the Houston Rockets. So no real concerns unless, weird NBA shit happens. So I'll say we're 99.9% sure that he's going to start unless the NBA, does some NBA sort of things. But the starting lineup that we have here for the Houston Rockets, which once again has been confirmed: Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jayshawn Tate, and Tari Eason starting alongside each other in the front court there. If you wouldn't mind, Jordan, let's pull up the ownership projections now.
Oh God, is Desmond Bane like actually hurt?
Yeah, he's dealing with a real big boy injury. This isn't a boo-boo.
Left, it's a foot sprain. Okay, so they changed that. It said no timetable for return. I'm just saying that because I have some, yes, it's disgusting to say out loud, but year-long fantasy teams that I need to account for. Why do I do this to myself all the time?
Houston Rockets. Could you sort by Houston here, Jordan? All right. So if we look at the Houston Rockets here, we have, let me refresh this. Actually, I think I'm looking at the old ownership on my screen here. I'm surprised that we don't have a ton of ownership going to these guys here, Eric. By the way, are you looking at DraftKings or FanDuel right now, Jordan? DraftKings?
Why did you say that? So
I can't believe this is all these 8% ownership going to J-Line. This must have not been updated since the last projection.
Yeah, there was some kind of an issue that I didn't get an update on the ownership for it because I do not think that this is remotely correct.
Yeah, so this is still waiting on one more update here, and then we'll go back to look at the ownership. I thought it had
I have Eason at 21% optimal, so I would assume he's going to be at least like 20% owned. If he's going to be this percent owned, I'm just going to have 100% of him, and that'll suck.
Yeah. No, there's no way that Jayshawn Tate is going to be 0.3% owned and that we're going to have 5% owned Tari Eason. So we'll circle back on this in a little bit here. First, let's answer some of these guys' questions because we've got some questions that are coming into us. We got Discord questions, we got super chats, and then we'll circle back. We'll see if the ownership is updated. And then also we'll do a nuke of the night. First question here. Not a question. Josh Chapman is just giving us some information, which is he believes that DeAndre Hunter is going to be traded for Julius Randle. Would you approve of that trade as a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, Eric?
100%. I would. First off, how does the money work with that? Because I doubt that something else has to be moving in that capacity. But anything to get Julius Randle out of Minnesota, I am a fan of. And DeAndre Hunter, I would certainly take. Shout
out to Seek. Seek gifted out 1 YouTube membership. So we do appreciate you for supporting the channel. I think SIK, Seek.
Psych?
So could be that too. And then we've got a super chat here from Jordan Klein. Jordan?
Who is that?
Jordan? All right. Exotic player. Eric spells Wemby's last name backwards.
Why would I do that? What's the point? Why do I? There's not like anything bad that I'm going to say if I go, okay, I have to actually like think about it. Wembenyama. It is A-M-A. So ask me anything. Is that what is there a joke here? What am I? Wembenyama. There's a Y. So A-M-A-Y. N. Wembanyama.
All right. Shout out to an absolute shit question by Jordan Klein, but what can you do about it? This is
Amma in what are we doing here?
Pierre left us a super chat here. It's a FanDuel question, and it says to all right, we got the Hornets starting lineup, nothing unexpected there. Pierre is asking us a 1v1 question here. It is Lauri Markkanen or Jalen Green for FanDuel. And then he also wants our favorite players at each position for FanDuel. Lauri Markkanen or Jalen Green for yourself, Eric?
Jalen Green by a pretty wide margin.
Jalen Green for myself as well. Do you have FanDuel lineups built out?
I do.
All right, so let's go over our favorite players to be rostering over on FanDuel. It's funny, I looked at my lineups for a second. I was like, why is there no Ryan Rollins in the point guard spot? And then I realized he's oddly shooting guard only over on FanDuel. So just something to keep in mind as we go through this exercise here. Point guard, my favorite overall player to be rostering, that is SGA, Eric.
Jose Alvarado.
All right. And then at shooting guard, it's just Ryan Rollins.
Ryan Rollins by a mile.
At small forward,
Aaron Wiggins by a mile.
I agree. It is Aaron Wiggins, who, by the way, has been playing. If people are concerned about the blowout, while it is possible that they mix it up, he's been playing garbage run in recent games. Even in some of those games he started, like the other day where he put up 1 billion fantasy points. There was a stretch where I think he had like 3 putbacks in a row.
Oh,
he played garbage time in that game.
He looked unrecognizable. Like, I couldn't believe I was watching Aaron Wiggins. I think he put up 41. It was the dumbest thing that I have ever seen.
Next position, power forward for me. That is currently Wemby. If you want a contrarian one, though, I like Sabonis a lot as a contrarian option on FanDuel. Power forward and center eligible. No De'Aaron Fox there anymore. 10,300. So Wemby, but Sabonis as a contrarian pivot.
Yeah, if you want to get your Precious Achiuwa, if he ends up starting, that's my contrarian option for you there. I think he looks awesome on FanDuel. 4,800.
And then also, obviously, Tyrese in a power forward as another one. Yeah. And then at center for me over on FanDuel, that is going to be Jonas Valanciunas.
Nikola Jokic.
All right, there we have it. Pierre, thank you very much for the super chat. And then we've got a question here from Note for Jason. Says, is Daniels good enough on defense to get less of Cade Cunningham? Eric, are you going to be getting off of Cade because of Dyson Daniels' defense?
No. And Dyson Daniels is very, very, very good at defense. The reason that I'm not going to get to as much Cade Cunningham is SGA exists above him. And yeah, it's a potential blowout spot. But you know what? SGA in 3 quarters, proven pretty efficient at just completely nuking slates no matter what. They're at 11K. I'm going to be getting up to him a little bit more. Also Detroit on the back-to-back, although, again, it's Atlanta on the other side. There's also this thing called the pick and roll, and you can basically get switches onto Cade Cunningham. Dyson Daniels, Atlanta, I mean, again, they can switch out a little bit with some of the wings, but he's still going to get a little bit of Trae Young in his life. Like, Cade Cunningham is Cade Cunningham. I try very hard not to ever. There's like 3 defenders that I basically evaluate as like above average and kind of end up being shied away towards certain guys. Amin Thompson already is probably one of them. Alex Caruso, who's out today, is another one. Like, there's guys like that every once in a while I'll be like, in a tie-breaking scenario, I'll get off of it. But I am not thinking about Dyson Daniels from that perspective at all.
I agree. The other thing, too, is there's certain players like Cade Cunningham at a certain level where, yeah, the defense, it hurts them if it's a better defender than a worse defender. But some of these guys are so good. It's like, what's the expectation? Cade Cunningham is going up against a plus defender, so we expect him to score 15 points instead of, like 28 or whatever it is he averages for the season. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of a minimal impact on their fantasy output, especially because defense is so team-oriented. It's not like everything is one-on-one. So overall, also, the Hawks have a pretty shitty defense. So Cade, if you just don't like him based on what his projection, his prices, that's fine. But keep in mind, too, things like the prop market, these are all little things that are taken into account for. It's also a pace-up game. The total is 237.5. The only games on the slate that have a higher total are Denver, New Orleans, and Utah, Indiana. So, there's one more, Memphis, Spurs also. There's like a really big gap where there's games that have totals in like the 220 to 215 range. And then you got the really high-end games that have totals in the upper 230 and the lower 240 range. So Pistons, Hawks, it's still expected to be a really high-scoring game. So, yeah, Cade, not somebody I want to be avoiding because of Dyson Daniels. Sunflower wants to know Taurean Prince or Gary Trent, same price. Do we think they play the same minutes?
I've thought about these guys a lot. I gotta think that it's Gary Trent just simply because of the upside, shooting guard, small forward, as opposed to small forward, power forward, 5 lineup spots he can show up at. Taurean Prince 4,200. I'm assuming that he ends up, being somebody who gets the start. But God, it's really, it's dire times either way with that. I think I'll probably just go the Gary Trent side of things.
Are they guys that you're going to be massively interested in?
No. Brook Lopez out. Maybe.
All right, there we go. Brook Lopez has officially been ruled out. I don't know why we couldn't have got this earlier. There's no way they were considering playing Brook Lopez today. So Brook Lopez officially has been ruled out. We hit on that before. Eric was saying that, and by the way, Bobby Portis, he was doubtful. He's officially been ruled out. I really don't have a good feel for who's going to be starting here. I know Eric before had guessed Tyler Smith. I'm just going to say Tyler Smith because I'll trust in Eric. I don't have a real strong take for myself.
Yeah, so he played in the G League. He didn't play college ball. He was one of the G League Ignite guys when they were still doing that, where they did that as the alternative to college with the Thompson brothers and things. They shut that down. But Tyler Smith, he's 6'11". I looked through the entire roster last night through this morning. I just don't see anything else. They have Chris Livingston. He's 6'6". They have Liam Robbins. He's 7 feet tall. Again, pay attention to the news. I doubt that he could possibly be active for this game, but just there's like a weird feeling that I get because that was what I was thinking with the Brook Lopez thing is that maybe they can't get another center, like an actual capable center there in time. I'm telling you, the next tallest player on this roster is 6'8" Taurean Prince. Like Taurean Prince will have to play center minutes. I don't see a world where that isn't what ends up being the case. Marion Beauchamp 6'6", Umude, he's 6'6", Gary Trent is 6'5", like. Oh boy, Isaiah Hartenstein should just have a lot of fun for the 2.5 quarters he plays.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many minutes do you think is reasonable to expect from guys like SGA and Hartenstein today?
Ooh, we got an interesting starting lineup. Atlanta, DeAndre Hunter, he is starting. Nice stuff from Rich. He threw that in there. I know Basketball Monster had that earlier today. That they had it listed as Hunter. I was a little surprised because it's always been like a David Roddy. They started Dominic Barlow last time out, but we got confirmed DeAndre Hunter starting.
All right. What does that do for you with DeAndre Hunter? Because he's been somebody who's clearly a good fantasy producer. He's had an excellent season. For whatever reason, the Hawks have decided whether it's because they want him to be in the running for the 6th Man of the Year award or they just want to keep his minutes down. They've been playing him off the bench this season. Now that he's in the starting lineup, just a general betting thought here. Peyton Pritchard, who is kind of getting close with DeAndre Hunter for 6th Man of the Year. If we assume Hunter starts going forward, Peyton Pritchard kind of has no competition left for that award, especially because Amen Thompson is starting now. So that's just one thing to add in there. But with DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup, what can we expect for his minutes and what does that do to his fantasy value?
Well, his fantasy value goes up because the minutes go up. He'll play alongside Trey, where his usage has been, earlier in the season, it was at a career low, but that was partially because of Jalen Johnson's emergence. We saw his assist rate at the highest mark of his entire career. I think DeAndre Hunter, hey, maybe a Minnesota showcase game. Let's go. But DeAndre Hunter, he had played minimal minutes earlier in the season purely because they just liked having him come off the bench. I got to take him up from 30 to 32-ish minutes. I think that's going to be good enough going up against a Detroit team on a back-to-back. They're kind of bringing pace every single night are the Atlanta Hawks. 238 total. Everything's saying get to a little bit more DeAndre Hunter at 5,800. I like these mid-ranges. He's not going to be nearly as good as Tari Eason to me at 5,400, but the one nice thing is that you do have small forward, power forward, so another lineup spot that he can slide into.
By the way, we do have the ownership updated for the Houston Rockets. I'll just read it off for you guys here, and it is, some of this is going to change a little bit now because of the situation with the Milwaukee Bucks and there being no Brook Lopez, although once again, still remains to be seen what their starting lineup is going to be. Tari Eason, 17% owned. Jalen Green, 15% owned. Jayshawn Tate, still only 4% owned, Eric. Thoughts?
I want to play Jayshawn Tate, but if he's going to be 4%, he's starting. He's 3,200. I know he's not the best fantasy performer on planet Earth, and I know there's a lot of places for his minutes to go, but Jabari Smith out, Şengün out, Steven Adams off the bench. Yeah. Hit the nuke in the night. Let's do this. Let's do it.
All right. Jordan, hit the nuke of the night.
Man, I have to watch
There
it
we
every
have it.
time.
There
Cinematic
we have
value.
it. So, Eric, you were very insistent that we hit the animation right there. So I'm curious, what is on your mind that you need to get off your chest right now?
Yeah, let's talk through this because I need your help. This is starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and there's two spots that I really want to highlight that I think are very interesting with bench players. We're going to get a lot of starters that I do think pull some interesting ownership. We're going to be updating stuff throughout the night. We're going to get the starting lineup from Milwaukee. We're going to get the starting lineup from a number of these spots. I'm curious what you think first off about Denver's bench, because it is basically non-existent with no Peyton Watson, no Russell Westbrook. I was going to lock the one, the only, the 3,400, I believe is what his price tag was, Julian Strother, but he's only showing up in like 3 lineup spots. We have some interesting chalk values that are going to pop up from time to time. Obviously, whatever happens with Milwaukee, we already have Rollins. We have a number of things there, but I think I want to switch it to Cam Whitmore. I think Cam Whitmore is the most interesting guy sub 4K on this slate. If they're going to go small ball and they're not necessarily going to go towards Steven Adams for like a bulk of minutes, like, I think everybody had him as the presumptive starter. We're going to see minutes inflated for Eason, but the guy who's extremely volatile to me is Jayshawn Tate. And the whole reason that you and I are surprised seeing that ownership, yeah, I'll probably get to some Jayshawn Tate, but I think that ownership ends up there. I don't think it shows up whatsoever. Cam Whitmore's only played 17 and 14 minutes the last two, but they're going to need offense off the bench in some capacity unless they're just going to play Amen Thompson 48 minutes, unless they're going to go Jayshawn Tate 36 minutes. Cam Whitmore is sub 4K, and he's not pulling any ownership whatsoever on this slate, and we know he's the best fantasy performer out of all of those nobodies that are coming off the bench there. I think Jayshawn Tate will probably end up a little bit higher there, but give me Cam Whitmore 3% ownership at the moment, nuke of the night.
Yeah. So Cam Whitmore, I definitely think there's an opportunity for him there. No Fred VanVleet, no Alperen Şengün. I'm surprised that I'm just going to go Tari Eason here, Eric, because I thought he was going to be crazy popular. Like when we were first looking at him, $5,400, good positionality. We got him projected for over 30 fantasy points. I just assumed he was going to be chalk. I wasn't expecting 17% ownership on that first run that we did there. Or I guess now there's been multiple runs since then. So Cam Whitmore, I agree with you. Really good spot for him. But I think there's a number of guys on the Houston Rockets now who look underowned. This is just not a chalk spot. Jalen Green, another one I want to be overweight to. I want to be overweight to Jayshawn Tate at 4%. I really like the Houston Rockets. I thought this was going to be a popular spot at the start of the show when we first found out that Şengün and Fred VanVleet were out. We knew what the starting lineup was going to be for Houston. I had said to you, Eric, that I usually like Jayshawn Tate more than the field, and he typically comes in lower owned than you would expect. But then I looked at the price. I was like, people are probably going to end up playing him a good amount. And you see the ownership update at 4%, and it's kind of backwards there. So like the entire Houston Rockets team looks really good to me. The one I like the most, though, is Tari Eason.
Yeah, I love Tari Eason. I think we're going to see a lot of things change because with Rollins and Smith, that's just like two guys that I think are going to absorb all of my lineup spots there. I don't have to go and play Jayshawn Tate here. I want to get those 40-point upside games. Like Jayshawn Tate getting you 20 will not win you a tournament. He's not going to maybe lose you a tournament if you get all of the other right pieces, but there is just such a winning upside to a Cam Whitmore. There's a winning upside to a Tari Eason. They're good fantasy performers. Think about that all the time. What is the upside if they... I bring his name up way too many shows, but Terrence Ross is always like the stone cold example for me. Think about what that upside is if Terrence Ross knocks down the first 3 or 4 shots. He can play 30 plus minutes as opposed to like 12. Now, some people have no idea who I'm talking about. If you've been playing DFS for a long time, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, a lot of these Houston guys, definitely good filler because 40 plus is definitely on the table.
Yeah, you have dated yourself a little bit there. This is we have to we have to avoid becoming those old people, Eric, because people are gonna be like, when was Terrence Ross last?
Hello, gamers.
How long's it been?
Hello, gamers. Just doing just an Eric to Eric transition.
Yeah, it's a good point. It was definitely an EMAC years that we lost saw him as somebody who really mattered. But I think good team to be rostered in the Houston Rockets. Want to let you guys in on another way you could find yourself some value for today. We got a couple of sales going on that started for today, and things I want to make sure you guys know about before we get to lock here in 13 minutes. And Josh and I head on over to playback. First, PGA DFS, we've got the Waste Management Open this week. That is going to be the first really big golf tournament of the season. And if you guys want to sign up for any of our PGA DFS packages, 50% off with the promo code WMPO, link down below in the YouTube description box. It already has that promo code loaded in, so that's going to be the easiest way for you guys to take advantage of that. And it's good for any package, 50% off, whether you want it to be a weekly package, a monthly package, one of the data packages, one of the Sims Max packages, whatever it is you're looking for, 50% off with the promo code WMPO. And then, of course, also our portfolio EV tools also going on sale today for the Super Bowl, 75% off, whether you guys want to sign up for a monthly or a weekly package with the promo code SB75. We got a ton of customers who've been doing really well with portfolio EV, and also something that we're starting to see a lot of people who are playing DFS are also getting into sports betting, and they're using it kind of like the old what cash games used to be. There's a lot of variance in GPPs, and while there isn't zero variance in betting, there is still some ups and downs that are going to come with it. It's nowhere close to as much as what you're going to see with the ups and downs that come with playing GPP. So this is what we've seen some people say, that they're using the portfolio EV tools kind of like as cash games to build up their bankroll, and then they're using that money to go ahead and play for some more in their GPPs. So this has been a really good way for people to kind of help build their bankroll, solidify it a little bit, and then chase some of the bigger cashes in NFL and NBA GPP. So that promo code SB75, 75% off. That's good through Sunday with the Super Bowl approaching. Eric, let's go ahead and look at any of the other questions that have come in for us here. And all right, we've got 1-2 says Jordan Klein is a grown man that drinks boba. All right, I don't know if that's a compliment. I don't know if it's a diss, but Jordan, you're a boba drinker.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
I don't know what it means, but it's
I don't
provocative.
even know. It almost calling him a boat, like it almost feels racist saying that, and I don't even know why. Yeah. It's just something about the way the consonants, the hard consonants,
rubbery balls in your mouth.
Freudian Slip says this wouldn't be the show I know and love without the exotic play of the day.
No,
play the animation, Jordan.
No,
sing it.
That was a great deflection by Jordan Klein there. Just immediately. Nothing to see here. Also, Reed Shepherd is in that. We probably should take Reed Shepherd out. He played like more than 10 minutes in an NBA game this year.
That's all right. He's an exotic. He'll make an appearance at the end of the season. Now, Eric, there's going to be one caveat to this, because we got another super chat from Dustin Stringer who wanted us to play the animation, but we can't use Jokic today. So who is the exotic player of the night? And we're not allowed to say Nikola Jokic. I have an answer, but it also comes with a little bit of a caveat.
I just assumed Tyler Smith was white and Mormon. He's not. So we can't use Tyler Smith.
That was going to be mine as well, with the exact same caveat.
Yeah. So I was covering my bases. I knew you were going to go there, but Tyler Smith, no, not an exotic. So there's really only one way to go with this. I think Pat Connaughton, if you're trying to get different, 3,200 could play blowout run. I get Jokic is going to be the most popular exotic. I'm going to have a ton of him. He's nearly 50% optimal, but Pat Connaughton off the board exotic. Take that off the shelf. Utilize it.
All right. I'm going to throw a little curveball at you. Are you ready?
Blake Snell?
Tyler Smith, because I think he should be exotic by looking at his name.
That's so dumb. You knew you were going to do something stupid like that. Like, it's not bad enough that I hate the bit, but now you have to like go and
Tyler Smith. Listen, if we don't watch the game, it's a terrible game on paper. Bucks and Thunder are favored by a gazillion points. We won't know the difference if we don't watch it. Tyler Smith's never going to be relevant on another slate again this year.
You're so ridiculous as a person in the world.
Tyler Smith. There we go. Exotic play of the night for me. It is Tyler Smith. We've got Josh Chapman says, Cade is a ball hog as well. Never passes to wide open Tim Hardaway Jr. Okay.
He has a 10.5 assist prop. He's passing to somebody. Maybe not Tim Hardaway Jr. because he sucks, but somebody else.
We've got Sam Van Dam. Any Trey Murphy love today? I think enough value is opened up at that position that it's going to be a no for me on Murphy.
The nice thing about Murphy is you get 40-point upside. I know this. Shout out Eitan Shander. Got me on that ladder on Saturday. Boy, did Trey Murphy climb it. But I look at Zion Williamson being back in that lineup. Trey Murphy, 7,800. A lot of things need to go right. Specifically, you just want to see as much Michael Porter Jr. on the other side. There it is, me talking about a defensive take. But I do think there's a world where Trey Murphy puts up 60. I just don't think it's a world that I really want to get to when I'm playing like mid-20s lineups. I'm probably gonna be a pass, sadly enough, for my boy Trey Murphy.
How are you doing on updating your lineups?
Almost there. I mean, hello, Ryan Rollins and Tyler Smith. Just please, for once, just be optimal. Just don't screw around. Put up 30. Just make this so much easier on us so that we can try to win this 6v6 contest. Don't do anything stupid, please. Thank you. End of rant.
So here's the other question I wanted to ask you is, how much Tyler Smith are you getting to? Because I'm rerunning Sims right now and looking at our initial projection. Usually a 30 fantasy point projection for Tyler Smith. I mean, I assume he is somebody I'm just going to get to a shit ton of.
Yeah, I have 100% of him. I have 82% again. Exact same number in my top 150 that I had before of Rollins. So there's that. I'm going to trim it down. My top 22, which is how many I'm playing there in that 5, it has 100% Ryan Rollins. So that's cool.
We've got some questions that have come into us from Discord. J12 for Heisman says, are there anybody that we are going to be boosting for flexibility? You know, now that we have Brooke Lopez confirmed out, and I'm going to be having so much exposure to Tyler Smith, so much exposure to Ryan Rollins, it's Nikola Jokic as well. I think my lineups are just naturally going to be pretty backloaded. If that changes when the Sims run is done in like 30 seconds, I'll let you know. But I don't think I have to boost anybody or anything.
No, the one thing I would make sure I had from these early games, I want to get to a little Cade Cunningham. I doubt I even really want to get to that much Trae Young. I think DeAndre Hunter, people are probably sleeping on in some capacity, but what are you doing with Jonas Valanciunas? He's the guy I'm struggling with the most because I know what that upside can be in 26 minutes, but I just feel like if Wemby plays, awesome. If he doesn't, I would much rather play Charles Bassey at what his ownership's going to be at 4K. I feel like I'm going to just take Jonas Valanciunas out.
I'm not going to take him out. Let me see. When I'm done here, I'll see how much I get. I don't want him to be in like 40% of lineups, but I'm okay with him being in some lineups because I think there's kind of a middle ground there because the way you said take him out, do you mean 0% of him or do you mean it in a different
So
way?
I currently have him in 32% of lineups in the Sims, but if we knew Charles Bassey at 4K was starting for the San Antonio Spurs, or if we knew Wemby was going to be starting and we knew that upside was there, I think I'd rather have center and utility open. And so it's one of those things that right now, as projection and ownership are sitting there in the Sims tool, I think it makes sense why I'm getting to him as much as what I am, but I don't want it based on what else I could turn that into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll see in a second what it is.
100% Tyler Smith is not going anywhere.
Yeah. I don't have an issue getting to a decent amount of Valanciunas. I don't want to be in like 40 or 50% of lineups. If he's in like 15 to 20, I'm okay with that.
Okay. I think I'm going to give him a little bit of a downgrade purely because I want those center spots for Bassey if it ends up being Bassey, because Bassey will be the best tournament play on the slate if he starts late. Just throwing that out there for the people.
Einstein, thoughts on Jalen Green tonight? Yeah, I think he looks solid. He's somebody to be overweight too.
Yes.
News God wants to know lotion play of the night. Eric, who's going to put the ball in the basket? But let's just answer these pretty quick. There's a bunch of them piling up.
You just said Jalen Green, so I'll say Jalen Green. He put the lotion on the skin.
Yeah, Jalen Green, definitely somebody who I like getting to. I also think Wemby's an interesting contrarian pay up option, kind of for the same reasons you had mentioned Bassey, but just the alternate, where if Wemby actually ends up playing here, he's going to be way overlooked, honestly, where he has as much upside as anybody other than Jokic. And there's a ton of value on the slate. So Wemby's another one who I think is really interesting to get to for tournaments. 1-2 wants to know who is the Ehrenberg point shaving prop play of the night. Ooh,
That one's
I like
so
that.
good.
I wish it didn't come in
That's
so
so
late here
good.
because I don't know what the
point shaving
go
prop
to-
of the night is definitely Domantas Sabonis, who dropped from 7.5 to 6.5 assists inexplicably. It's an interesting one there for sure. So Domantas Sabonis, the point shaver of the evening.
I'm going to go with, this is towards the top of portfolio EV, but also under 5.5 rebounds for SGA. I just think it's very unlikely he has to play the fourth quarter. So under 5.5 rebounds for SGA for me.
Okay.
We've also got a question here from Coach DFS. Who are the cash game locks? All right. So now as we are approaching lock here, Tyler Smith, Ryan
Yes.
Rollins, Nikola
Jokic.
Jokic, Aaron, I don't even know if I'd say the cash game locks for me are Jokic, Rollins, and Tyler Smith.
And Wemby if he plays for me. And
Maddie
Bassey if he ends up
why
being
is
Bassey.
Aaron Wiggins' projection so high? He's been playing in garbage time as of late. Jalen Williams is out. Those are
Correct.
the main reasons.
That is correct.
Clintwood 83 wants to know, can he fade the first 2 games in DK Cash? Yeah, you don't. You are not obligated to play those
I think I'm going to when it's all said and done here. I just nerfed everything from Duran and I have a very strong anti-Duran and anti-Jonas Valanciunas stance today, which is crazy because I've been playing tons of those guys.
I landed on 20% of Valanciunas. I'm totally cool with that being the number.
Yep, that's fine. That's fine.
Sniffs 1, 2, 3, 4. Who is the must plays from Milwaukee? Tyler Smith and Ryan Rollins for me. And then we've got Jag 260. Any love for Connaughton tonight? Let's see.
I
Pat
brought him up.
Connaughton.
He was my exotic of the night, which I know is so very, very important to all of you.
I'm overweight to
Monsters.
him. I think he's a good contrarian option to be getting to. Single digit ownership. I've got about 20% of him. And then M Grizzly wants to know thoughts on Tyler Smith. Yeah, I have Tyler Smith and Ryan Rollins all in over 90% of lineups. I have no issue loading up on those two guys. They're $3K and $3,100, and they're probably both going to be playing 30 plus minutes. We're going to need the official starting lineup for the Bucks just to confirm it. But to me, Rollins and Smith are the two best value options on this slate. And I'm surprised Smith isn't more popular.
Yeah, and I will say this for the last time. Charles Bassey is your best value option in the event that he ends up getting a start now. It's going to be Smith, Rollins, and Bassey in like every lineup if Bassey ends up starting for Wemby.
All right. And that is just about going to bring us to locks. If you guys haven't done yet, do us a big favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's still a shit ton of news to come as well. We've got starting lineups that we're waiting on. We've got injury updates that we're waiting on. So come join Josh and I over in playback because we've got Wemby. He's still questionable. That's a big one. The Milwaukee Bucks starting lineup. It's funny, like we're loading up on Tyler Smith because he's a presumed starter, but it's not like we know for a fact that Tyler Smith's going to start. He's Tyler Smith. We had to look up his. We were doing the
I
exotic
was
player.
surprised.
We're trying to figure out whether he's qualified or not. So Tyler Smith, we don't know what that starting lineup's going to be, but Wemby is questionable. John Moran is still questionable. That's massive.
Available to play, John Morant.
All right,
Brandon Clark out.
Then screw me, NBA injury report. I'm trying to give the people information contradicting me. Miles Turner is still questionable. Aaron Gordon is questionable. So lots of reasons to join Josh and I over in playback. So Jordan, if you could drop that link in there, which I see you already did, you guys click on that, join Josh and I over in playback, and then we wait for the news. Have a good night, guys. See you over in playback.